On a quiet summer evening in June 2007, the small town of Siloam Springs, Arkansas, was shaken by a mystery that would haunt its residents for years. 70-year-old Polly DeVore seemed to vanish without a trace. Her farmhouse was left in chaos. Furniture overturned, documents scattered, bullet holes in the kitchen wall, yet almost no blood, no signs of forced entry, and no clear struggle. Her car remained in the driveway, but she herself was gone. What began as a suspected home invasion soon unraveled into something far darker. As investigators peeled back the layers of the DeVore family's life, they uncovered secrets of betrayal and a murder plot so twisted. This is the chilling story of how a seemingly ordinary family, respected in their community, it was torn apart by lies, greed, and revenge. In 2007, Pauline "Polly" DeVore, 70 years old, and her husband Bob DeVore, 65, were well-known residents of Siloam Springs, a quiet town in northwest Arkansas. Both had been married before finding each other. Polly's first marriage to Robert Haller lasted a decade and produced 4 children, 3 boys and a girl. After the divorce, custody went to Robert, leaving Polly free to start over. She remarried a year later, and this second marriage was far more stable. Though she and her new husband had no children together, they poured their energy into building wealth, investing in land and apartments. 2 decades later, tragedy struck. Polly's husband died of a sudden heart attack, leaving her a widow, alone, and managing a vast property. She eventually crossed paths with Bob DeVore, a man 5 years younger, himself divorced, also searching for companionship. They married in 1987 and, to all appearances, built a steady life together. From the outside, the DeVore's family seems perfect. By 2007, they had been married 20 years, running separate but successful businesses. Polly owned several rental properties in town, while Bob worked the long miles as a truck driver. They gave the impression of a couple who had endured storms and were now preparing to enjoy retirement in comfort. No one could have guessed that June of that year would rip their lives apart. On June 15, 2007, Bob returned home from his job as a truck driver and walked into a nightmare. Their farmhouse was in shambles. Furniture overturned, drawers pulled out, belongings strewn across the floor. It looked like someone had torn through the house searching for something. Polly's car sat in the driveway, but she was gone. Most alarming of all, bullet holes riddled the kitchen window and wall, a silent marker of violence inside what should have been a safe home. Bob checked the safe and discovered nearly $10,000 missing, along with rental receipts and other financial records. But money was not what panicked him most. It was Polly's absence. She hadn't planned to go anywhere, and nothing suggested she had left voluntarily. To him, it looked like she had been kidnapped. He called the police immediately. When investigators arrived, they too were struck by the contradictions. The house looked ransacked, valuables were missing, and bullet holes marked the kitchen. But where was the struggle? Only a few drops of blood were found. Too little to suggest a violent confrontation. Stranger still, there were no signs of forced entry. The doors and windows were intact, and the alarm system had not been triggered. It was as though the intruder had walked in freely. Bob told police the door had been locked when he arrived, which only deepened the mystery. Detectives began to wonder if this really had been a robbery at all, or if Polly herself had been the target. Bob swore that Polly had no enemies. He described her as gentle, quiet, and deeply artistic, spending hours at home with her drawings. She wasn't involved in shady dealings, he said, nor had she ever received threats. To him, she was a woman who avoided conflict at every turn. But the crime scene suggested otherwise. Something about this disappearance didn't add up. One curious detail Bob did mention to police was his wife's recent streak of good fortune. Polly, he explained, loved visiting casinos and frequented such establishments. He believed she had been incredibly lucky in recent months, having hit the jackpot 4 or even 5 times in a row. Each time she came home with thousands in cash, sometimes more than $5,000. Polly was proud of her winnings, and Bob suspected that her luck might have drawn the wrong kind of attention. Detectives began to build a theory. Perhaps someone had noticed Polly's casino success and targeted her. Maybe, during Bob's absence, she had gone to gamble again, won big, and been followed home. That would explain the lack of forced entry. The intruder could have confronted her outside, taken her keys, and walked in without setting off the alarm. But if robbery was the only motive, why take rental receipts and bank documents in addition to cash? The choice of stolen items hinted at someone who knew the family's business, or even a client familiar with Polly's dealings. Investigators next questioned Polly's daughter, 47-year-old Dolores Eggert, who lived in a guest house on the ranch and often helped with chores. Dolores said she last saw her mother on June 14, the day before the disappearance. Polly seemed calm and didn't appear to be upset. She remembered. Dolores insisted she didn't believe her mother had problems serious enough to lead to an abduction. She also claimed she hadn't heard gunshots on the property, explaining that she may have been out shopping when the break-in occurred. A ranch worker, Monica Bautista, confirmed Dolores's account. Meanwhile, Bob clung to hope that Polly was still alive. A search and rescue operation was launched, with law enforcement canvassing the area, notifying the public, and asking witnesses to come forward. But after 2 days, there were no suspects, no clear leads, and still no trace of Polly. Rumors of the strange events at the DeVore home spread quickly through town. Then, a neighbor came forward with disturbing information about Dolores. He told police that on June 16, the day after the supposed burglary, Dolores had shown up at his house behaving oddly. She handed him guns and ammunition, claiming they belonged to her stepfather, asked him to hide them on his property until things settled down. According to the neighbor, Dolores said she hadn't seen her mother, believed the house had been robbed, and worried that Bob could get into trouble since he didn't have a firearm permit. She promised to notify the police herself, but never did, suspicious of her behavior. The neighbor turned the weapons over to law enforcement. Detectives soon confirmed that Dolores had not contacted them at all. Coupled with her attempt to hide her stepfather's gun, her actions looked far more troubling. The firearm was immediately sent for forensic testing. When detectives brought this up with Bob, he admitted that Dolores hadn't called him either, and that he had no idea where she was. She had vanished from the guest house on the ranch and wasn't answering her phone. Investigators told him to alert them as soon as Dolores reappeared. But the situation was increasingly alarming. She knew her mother was missing, money was stolen, but did not participate in the search and disappeared herself. At this point, Dolores became the prime suspect. Police considered the possibility that she had staged the burglary, stolen money and documents, and fled. But there was also the darker chance that Polly's disappearance and Dolores's vanishing were connected. That Dolores, too, had fallen victim to the same unknown criminal. With thousands of dollars missing and both women gone, investigators had to consider every possibility, even the unlikely scenario of a mother and daughter running away together. The financial investigation into Polly and her daughter, Dolores, soon revealed troubling dynamics inside the DeVore family. Beneath the surface of their seemingly ordinary lives, there were cracks. Polly and Dolores had never shared the warm bond of mother and daughter. Dolores had been raised mostly by her father, and when she did live with Polly, their relationship was volatile. Neighbors recalled frequent quarrels that sometimes escalated into physical fights. Years later, Dolores moved back in with her mother, hoping to repair their relationship. For a while, things appeared normal, but old tensions resurfaced. Polly criticized Dolores for being unemployed and for her provocative style of dress, insisting she should live on her own. Their conflicts weren't new. As a teenager, Dolores had been so difficult that Polly sent her to live with her father in Texas, labeling her lazy and immature. That decision left Dolores deeply resentful. In Texas, instead of maturing, Dolores became involved with a man who had a criminal history. He sold banned substance, had multiple arrests, and served several prison terms. Through this relationship, Dolores herself fell into addiction. This link to the criminal underworld gave detectives a new theory. Perhaps Dolores and her boyfriend had conspired in Polly's disappearance. They may have planned a kidnapping for ransom. But no ransom demands ever came. Investigators turned again to Bob, Polly's husband, seeking clarity. His version of events conflicted with the darker accounts they had gathered. Bob insisted that years earlier, Polly had taken Dolores back, not out of obligation, but out of love. Blaming herself for pushing Dolores away, Polly wanted to help her daughter recover. Bob said Dolores was given steady work, helping to manage the ranch and their rental properties. She was even paid a salary so she could build independence. According to Bob, Dolores had turned her life around. She no longer used banned substance and was finally thinking about her future. He completely dismissed the idea that Dolores could have harmed her mother, dismissing witness testimony, but Bob's unwavering defense of Dolores raised suspicions of his own. Detectives began considering another possibility, that Bob himself had played a role in his wife's disappearance. His alibi, a business trip out of town, was scrutinized. Could he have arranged for someone else to do the job? Investigators combed through receipts, phone records, and his digital communications. In the end, the timeline of his trip checked out. Bob was indeed away when Polly vanished. Still, police did not completely rule him out. Hiring a hitman was not impossible. Though it seemed increasingly unlikely, the case stalled again. With both Polly and Dolores missing, and no ransom or clear leads, detectives turned their attention to the family's business dealings. Polly, who owned several properties, was known for being blunt. Tenants sometimes failed to pay, requiring her to be firm. She carried cash almost daily, collecting rent in person and keeping a bag full of bills. Receipts at her side, she allowed no delays in payment. If rent wasn't paid on time, she would return the next day with the sheriff to evict them. Though her methods kept business profitable, they also earned her enemies. Detectives began to wonder, had an angry tenant, pushed to the edge by eviction or humiliation, sought revenge? With Polly's reputation for harshness, the possibility could not be dismissed. And now, the investigation had a new direction. As detectives continued questioning people who knew Polly, a more complex picture of her character emerged. Though she had a reputation for being strict, even abrasive, when it came to business, she was also known for her generosity. Polly was active in local charities, regularly donated to community projects, and often lent a helping hand to those in need. Even with her tenants, who sometimes saw her as harsh before, she often paid their utility bills or handled expensive repairs out of her own pocket. To many, she was a stern but ultimately fair woman. This duality puzzled investigators. If Polly was respected and even loved by many in her community, then who would have wanted her dead? Yet several tenants revealed that Polly had changed in recent months. She seemed preoccupied, more distant than before. Where she once deposited rent money directly into the bank, she now began visiting casinos immediately after collecting it. Detectives tracked down her gambling haunts, where employees admitted they knew her well. So well, in fact, that they sometimes called her if she hadn't been around for a while. Surveillance confirmed she had developed a gambling problem. She often lost all the rent money. Her husband claimed she hadn't told either him or Dolores about this. Still, one detail stood out. She had not been seen at the casino on the day of her disappearance or the day before, eliminating the theory that she had vanished during a gambling trip. Suspicion once again shifted toward Bob. Detectives questioned how a man so responsible could allow his wife to squander their future in such a reckless way. It was possible that Bob was aware of her gambling and that a confrontation, intended to stop her, had escalated, resulting in her death in a fit of anger. But the deeper investigators dug into the DeVore family's finances, the more shocking the picture became. Years of quiet accumulation were unraveling. Properties once secure were now mortgaged. Savings depleted. Debts mounting. Polly's gambling addiction had bled their fortune dry, and whispers of substance abuse only darkened the picture. On paper, Bob seemed to have a motive. But when investigators examined Polly's will, the theory collapsed. The will revealed a crucial detail. Bob stood to lose everything if Polly died. The rental properties technically belonged to her late husband and were held in a trust. After Polly's death, the properties would pass to her sons. Bob, despite decades of marriage, was cut out completely. To kill her would mean losing everything. Dolores, too, was excluded from the will. She had no inheritance to gain from her mother's death, making her motive equally murky. Once again, the case hit a frustrating dead end, and yet, Dolores remained at the center of suspicion. Her strange behavior after the disappearance, handing a gun to a neighbor, failing to notify the police, then vanishing herself, suggested she knew more than she was saying. Though officially listed as missing, detectives secured a warrant for her arrest, hoping to track her down alive. More than a week after the disappearance, the search ended. Dolores was found, alive, but in critical condition, nearly 500 kilometers away. She had attempted to end her own life by overdosing on pills. After being stabilized, she was taken into custody. During questioning, Dolores expressed genuine surprise that her disappearance had caused any concern. She denied knowing anything about her mother's fate, claiming Polly had probably gone to the casino for a few days. Dolores insisted the supposed robbery was nothing more than unfortunate coincidence. She portrayed herself as overworked and underpaid, resentful of her mother's control, and eager for independence. But when investigators examined Dolores's electronic devices, the truth began to unravel. Buried in messages and witness reports was a secret more disturbing than anything they had uncovered so far. Dolores was having an affair with her stepfather, Bob. Neighbors later admitted they had occasionally seen the pair kissing passionately when Polly was away. The relationship, detective learned, had begun not long after Dolores returned from Texas, and though the two were discreet, the whispers had been circulating for years. All of this raised even more concern for the police, as it gave both Robert and Dolores a legitimate motive to want Polly dead. Together, they stood to control Polly's business, her home, and the remnants of the family's fortune if Polly were out of the picture. Still, Dolores offered nothing further, and without concrete evidence, detectives could not arrest her. For the time being, Polly's fate remained a mystery. What happened next only deepened suspicions. Within 2 weeks of Polly's disappearance, Dolores openly moved in with Bob, no longer hiding their relationship. She also began managing her mother's affairs, as though Polly were never coming back. To investigators, it was as good as a confession. They no longer believed Polly was alive, yet Dolores was skilled at concealing the truth. For months, the case stalled, until word spread that she had relapsed into her old habits. Despite her claims of sobriety, Dolores was once again using banned substance, and in a small town, such secrets are impossible to keep. Detectives traced her connections to local dealers, suspecting that someone in the criminal underworld might know more, perhaps even whether Dolores had tried to hire a killer. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: Polly's longtime housekeeper, Monica Bautista. Arrested for forgery and facing deportation due to her undocumented status, Monica initially denied everything. But with the threat of prison and expulsion hanging over her, she bargained for immunity. In exchange, she gave investigators the confession they had been waiting for. According to Monica, she had witnessed the murder herself. On the day Polly vanished, Dolores confronted her mother at the farmhouse, pointing a gun at her. The weapon jammed, and a violent struggle erupted. Panicked, Monica grabbed a stick and struck Polly, trying to stop the fight. Dolores knocked her mother unconscious with a crowbar and grabbed another gun. She turned around and shot her mother 3 times in the chest, killing her. Together, they attempted to destroy evidence, burning parts of Polly's body before meeting Bob at a casino in Oklahoma. Monica recounts that it was there that Dolores told Bob that Polly had died. Far from shocked, on June 15, Bob DeVore returned home. He used farm machinery to push his wife's burned body into a sinkhole. He shot out the front window of the house to distract police. Monica said, "The murder wasn't some impulsive act. It was a crime carefully plotted by Dolores long before it happened. Every step was so well prepared, so precise, that the only flaw in the plan was Monica herself. Had Dolores acted alone, she might never have been caught. But she needed an accomplice, someone Polly trusted. That's where Monica came in. Dolores manipulated her, convincing her that Polly had discovered their criminal ties and was preparing to turn them in to the police. Afraid for her own future, Monica believed the only way out was to help Dolores. And so, she lured Polly into a secluded corner of the ranch. Polly thought she was simply meeting her assistant, but she did not suspect that a deadly plot was being hatched against her. Bob, Polly's husband, played his own dark role. He helped dispose of the body. As for the motive, Monica believed it all stemmed from years of resentment. Dolores described her mother as cruel and controlling, and deep down, she had carried a burning hatred since childhood. Outwardly, she pretended to reconcile, even returning from Texas to rebuild her relationship and help with the family business. But it was all a facade. Her real intention was vengeance. Even her affair with Bob wasn't about love. It was about taking everything from Polly, including the man she married, guided by Monica. Investigators found the crime scene and the spot where Polly's remains had been burned. It took weeks of painstaking excavation, but forensic experts eventually uncovered bone fragments and several dental crowns belonging to Polly DeVore. Confronted with this evidence, Dolores Eggert was arrested. Once she realized Monica would testify against her, she abandoned all denials and confessed. In August 2010, after reaching a plea agreement, Eggert was sentenced to 30 years in prison for murder. Bob DeVore, meanwhile, clung to his innocence. He claimed he only discovered later that Dolores had killed Polly and insisted he never participated. But no one believed him. Both Dolores and Monica pointed the finger at him, and the evidence told its own story. Investigators said he was fed up with Polly's gambling and reckless spending, and he agreed to help cover up her murder. His gun had even been fired inside the home to stage parts of the crime. In the end, in January 2011, he was convicted of obstruction and evidence tampering, earning 10 years behind bars. Bob's greatest punishment, however, wasn't the prison sentence. It was the devastating realization that Dolores had used him from the start. She never loved him. He was just another pawn in her vendetta against her mother. Bob died of cancer in prison in 2014, but even with Dolores and Bob punished, there's one bitter truth that still haunts Polly's family. Monica, the assistant who lured Polly to her death, delivered a brutal blow to her head, and even helped burn the body, walked away free. To this day, she has never faced justice. For Polly's relatives, that remains the cruelest injustice of all. Love triangles have always been one of the deadliest sparks behind domestic crimes. Each person involved carries hidden motives, and from those motives, a web of lies begins to form, so tangled that even the most skilled investigators struggle to find the truth. The death of someone we love is always a tragedy. But in the world of crime, detectives know a painful reality. Even the most convincing tears can be nothing more than a mask, carefully staged to cover guilt. And this is not just theory. It happened in the life of one man whose story shocked an entire community. He had everything: love, friendship, success, and the admiration of those around him. On the surface, his life looked perfect. But beneath that image, dark secrets were brewing, and a deadly trap was being set. That man was Jamie Faith. To friends, he was warm and trustworthy. To neighbors, he embodied the American dream. Yet fate would drag him into a twisted web of passion, betrayal, and murder. A crime so brutal, it left everyone asking, who could want Jamie dead? And why? Stay with us as we uncover how a marriage that seemed built on love turned into a nightmare that ended in bloodshed, deception, and shocking betrayal. Jamie Faith was born in Madison, Wisconsin, on May 11, 1971. After graduating high school in 1994, he immediately pursued a bachelor's degree in computer science at university. He successfully graduated and spent several years working as a software engineer in his hometown, where he was recognized for his professionalism. He was a hardworking individual who frequently informed his family that he did not want to get married or have children. While he had many friends and was generally sociable, Jamie struggled in romantic relationships. However, those who knew him well described him as a decent, family-oriented man, friendly, warm-hearted, and an animal lover. In the fall of 2005, at the age of 34, Jamie traveled to Arizona, where he met Jennifer, a healthcare administrator. They hit it off immediately, talking late into the night, and their relationship quickly blossomed. Jamie moved to Arizona shortly after meeting Jennifer and easily bonded with her 8-year-old daughter, Amber. As their relationship grew, Jamie advanced professionally at American Airlines. Their life together appeared to be flourishing. Jamie has built a good relationship with both Jennifer and Amber. Treating the girl like a daughter, he contrasted sharply with Jennifer's previous partner, Amber's biological father, who had abandoned her when he learned of the pregnancy. Jennifer described her former partner as abusive and cruel, often instilling fear in her. After years together, Jamie and Jennifer decided to marry in Las Vegas in the summer of 2012. By 2017, they had been together for 12 years, of which 5 were as a married couple. Jamie landed a new high-level position at American Airlines, which required them to move from Arizona to Texas. They settled in Dallas and began building a new home in the Oak Cliff area of California, just 11 kilometers from the city, which Jamie believed was the perfect place to live. They are loved by the community, often hosting barbecues for the neighbors. Jamie remained a hard-working and kind person who enjoyed walking his dog each day. By October 2020, Jamie and Jennifer had been married for 8 years and had lived in their home for over 3 years. They celebrated their 15th anniversary since meeting with a special dinner on October 8. The next morning, Friday, October 9, 2020, Jamie, now 49, was preparing for work around 7:30 a.m. He took his beloved dog for a short walk, which was part of his daily routine. On this morning, however, an unforeseen tragedy awaited him. In the usually quiet neighborhood, there were few people out, and their house had security cameras that captured Jamie and Jennifer leaving with the dog. Unbeknownst to them, this walk would mark the final moments of Jamie's life. A black pickup truck was parked on the opposite side of the road when a stranger wearing a blue mask suddenly got out. He quickly raised a gun and aimed it at Jamie Faith. Everything happened in an instant. Jamie barely had time to react and was caught off guard. The assailant fired a pistol, emptying the magazine. Out of 9 shots, 7 bullets struck Jamie. After the gunshots rang out, women's screams echoed throughout the area. Neighbors from nearby homes ran out and saw Jennifer standing next to Jamie, looking horrified. Instead of fleeing, the attacker targeted Jennifer next. He knocked her to the ground, bound her wrists with duct tape, and attempted to remove her wedding ring. Their dog attacked the attacker, but he quickly fought back. By this time, several neighbors had gathered, watching the harrowing scene unfold. When the attacker noticed the witnesses, he stopped his assault, jumped back into his black pickup truck, and sped away. Meanwhile, multiple residents called the local police to report the incident. Emergency vehicles arrived quickly, but it was too late. Medics pronounced Jamie dead at the scene. He had been hit 3 times in the face, 3 times in the chest, and once in the stomach. He bled to death within minutes, and the autopsy later revealed that half of his wounds were fatal, indicating that the assailant was likely skilled with firearms, possibly having a military or law enforcement background. Jamie lost his life on October 9, 2020, just 10 meters from his front door, sending shockwaves through the neighborhood. Forensic teams began examining the area immediately. While detectives started gathering details about the incident, Jennifer, although largely unharmed, was in shock and received medical attention. The tape used to bind her wrists was sent for analysis. Despite not suffering physical harm, the community was concerned for Jennifer, who had witnessed her husband's murder. Through her tears, she spoke to the police, describing her attacker as a man in a blue mask, who opened fire on Jamie without warning. After running out of bullets, he tied her hands and forcibly took her wedding ring before fleeing in his truck. Most houses in the area were equipped with surveillance cameras, and neighbors were willing to share footage with the police. Although they couldn't identify the shooter, the truck was of particular interest. Even though the license plate was not visible, the make was recognizable, and a distinctive letter T on the rear window resembled the emblem of the Texas Rangers baseball team. When asked about anyone she knew who might be a fan, Jennifer struggled to recall. In her grief, Jennifer appeared on television, pleading for the killer to turn himself in. Later, she returned to the police station for further questioning. She broke down in tears and had difficulty communicating but then calmed down and provided more information. She noted she could see the killer's dark eyes through the mask and described his clothing and the sequence of the attack. After he bound her hands with tape, he hit her in the face, a detail corroborated by witnesses who had rushed to the scene. All that remained on Jennifer's body was a small abrasion. Jennifer insisted that the attack appeared to be an attempted robbery. However, there were several inconsistencies with this theory, particularly regarding the timing and the attacker's behavior. The suspect did not appear to be trying to conceal his actions, making it unlikely that this was a standard robbery. This raised questions about his true intentions. The police found it hard to believe that he would spontaneously choose to rob a couple while driving through a residential area, especially since they were just taking a walk with their dog. The attacker appeared overly prepared and unafraid, suggesting that his main target was Jamie, while the attempted theft of the ring and assault on Jennifer might have been a cover for his real motives. After the attacker shot Jamie, it seemed clear that he had a personal motive, especially since he didn't shoot Jennifer. As a result, Jennifer was re-interrogated. It was suggested that Jamie had made a dangerous enemy, though their identity remained unknown. Jennifer explained that she and Jamie had been happy together and celebrated their 15th anniversary just a day before his death, which was a joyous occasion for them. She described Jamie as a loving and calm person, making it hard to believe he had such a serious adversary. Following this, she and her daughter, Amber, set up a GoFundMe page to seek financial assistance for the funeral. As a housewife, Jennifer was facing significant financial challenges. The initiative quickly gained support, raising over $60,000 in a short time. Neighbors also helped by providing food. Jennifer shared her harrowing experience with the media, expressing hope that the killer would be caught soon. With the funds, she organized 2 funeral services for Jamie, one in Dallas and another in Phoenix. Meanwhile, detectives were diligently working to find the perpetrator. They discovered .45 caliber shell casings at the crime scene, along with Scotch tape and bullets removed from Jamie's body, which were sent for analysis. Review of surveillance footage was prioritized. They found a video taken a few hours before the attack, showing an unknown man walking near the fence of Jamie's home and appearing to survey the area. His attire closely matched that of the man who later shot Jamie and attacked Jennifer. His suspicious behavior led detectives to rule out the possibility of an accidental shooting. He clearly had an interest in Jamie's family, raising questions about his connection to them. In their search for clues, detectives requested Jennifer's mobile phone and her husband Jamie's phone. while Jamie's phone contained no significant information, suggesting he had no known conflicts. Jennifer's phone contained a suspicious text message sent weeks before the murder. In that message, she talked about a man named Darren, and the context suggested that their relationship was more than just casual friends. When contacted, this friend confirmed that they had heard about the possibility that Jennifer was romantically involved with someone else, but did not provide any further details. Law enforcement wanted to learn more about Darren Lopez, a 48-year-old Army veteran who had served in Iraq and Afghanistan. At the time of the murder, he was divorced and living alone on a farm in Cumberland Furnace, Tennessee, a small community, nearly 1,000 kilometers from Dallas. It raised questions when investigators discovered that Jennifer had been discussing Darren shortly before Jamie's death. They decided to explore the connection between Darren and Jennifer. It turned out that Darren and Jennifer were not just acquaintances. They had dated in high school and attended prom together. They continued their relationship into college until Darren's military service interrupted it. By that time, they had even talked about marriage. But they hadn't seen each other for decades, since their youth. After leaving the military in 2017 and subsequently divorcing his wife, Darren found himself isolated on his farm. He struggled to connect with his 4 children due to his military duties, which included a traumatic incident where he sustained a serious head injury from a bomb explosion. He became increasingly withdrawn and suffered from depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, worsened by financial struggles. To combat his loneliness, Darren started reconnecting with old friends online, including Jennifer. By late 2020, he reached out to her for the first time, and they quickly began chatting multiple times a day. Their conversations started off casually, reminiscing about the past. After about a month, Darren expressed that he had always cared for Jennifer, and she seemed to reciprocate his feelings. Their discussions became more personal, including sharing photos and talking about a potential future together on his farm, which raised suspicions among investigators. Detectives then noticed Darren's black Nissan pickup truck was the same make and model as the vehicle seen in CCTV footage near the crime scene. Alarmingly, the day before the murder, on October 8, 2020, Darren informed his family that he was going hunting. He drove 1,000 kilometers to Dallas in just 12 hours, which was verified by his car's navigation system and traffic cameras. He arrived in Oak Cliff early on the morning of October 9. After comparing photos, investigators found that Darren closely resembled a man seen looking through the fence at Jamie's home. During the 7 months prior, Darren and Jennifer communicated regularly, exchanging over 40,000 text messages and hundreds of hours of phone calls. However, Jennifer had deleted this data from her phone, making it difficult for investigators to retrieve it. While Darren's phone retained all the information, detectives continued to delve into their relationship, which appeared increasingly relevant to the case. Notably, just 28 hours after Jamie's murder, Jennifer and Darren met. Alarmingly, Jennifer sent Darren a text warning him that the police were suspicious and that they had obtained a description of him and his vehicle. She advised him to remove a decal of his favorite baseball team, which he did promptly. Before meeting Darren, detectives spoke with people who knew him. Many immediately confirmed that he had been driving with the sticker for a long time, but it had disappeared after the shooting of Jamie. The police arranged to meet Darren after discovering he owned a registered .45 caliber pistol. They executed a search warrant and found the weapon, which was sent for ballistics testing, as well as a blue mask matching eyewitness descriptions. Further analysis confirmed that this gun was used to shoot Jamie. In Darren's car, they also found several credit cards belonging to Jennifer. After reviewing the transactions, it became evident that Jennifer had been financially supporting Darren for a long time. She also bought him expensive electronic devices, a plane ticket, so he could go on vacation with the children, and asked him not to refuse anything. It emerged that Jennifer had misused funds raised on GoFundMe to support Darren and had not paid for Jamie's funeral, leaving the debt in her name. This revelation shocked the public, leading GoFundMe to offer refunds to donors once they learned of Jennifer's deceit. Darren Lopez was arrested on January 11, 2021, while playing tennis at home, and he was charged with first-degree murder. When questioned, Jennifer denied any involvement in the crime. However, her actions suggested she was more cunning than Darren. Despite being caught in lies, after Jamie's death, she distanced herself from others and refused to comment about her connection to Darren, contrasting sharply with her previous emotional interviews. Despite Darren's arrest, Jennifer continued to communicate with him, using a third party to send messages to him in prison. Several of these messages were intercepted, revealing her declarations of love for him and her commitment to support him. This behavior raised suspicions among detectives that she may have played a role in planning the crime, especially since Jamie held a life insurance policy worth $628,000, of which Jennifer was the sole beneficiary. Notably, this policy was issued only months before his death. While Darren was in custody, investigators seized Jennifer's cell phone, computer, and laptop, further corroborating their suspicions of her involvement in the murder plot. They discovered that she had created a fake account to communicate with Darren in order to confuse the investigation. She misled Darren with stories of ongoing abuse from Jamie, claiming he had physically harmed her and her daughter. She sends Darren pictures of injuries allegedly caused by Jamie, attempting to stir up hatred towards Jamie and justify her actions. Detectives looked into these statements, but none of Jamie's friends confirmed that he was abusive. They described Jamie as a friendly and peaceful person. Jamie's family was bewildered by these allegations and vehemently denied them. They did not understand why Jennifer stayed with Jamie for 15 years if she believed he was an abuser. Darren received photos through a fake account that Jennifer claimed were of her injuries. None of the photos showed her face, and she had not reported any incidents of domestic violence to the police. Some of the images were publicly accessible online, and her computer's search history showed she had looked them up. This was all part of a manipulation intended to convince Darren to kill Jamie. Even in prison, Darren believed Jennifer's lies until his lawyer presented evidence proving the photos were fake. Amber, Jennifer's daughter, also stated that Jamie had never harmed her. Darren was devastated to learn he had killed an innocent person, which destroyed his family. Fortunately, Darren started to speak out. He shared that in August 2020, he met Jennifer in person, and there, she asked him to kill Jamie. They carefully planned the attack. With Jennifer devising the main scenario, he executed the plan but arrived in Dallas earlier than expected, which led to him being captured on surveillance cameras near Jamie's house. Jennifer was arrested in February 2021, just a month after Darren. She was initially charged with obstructing justice, but faced first-degree murder and solicitation of murder charges by September 2021. She denied her guilt and asserted that Darren was motivated by jealousy. However, the accumulating evidence against her led to her facing the death penalty. After months in jail, Jennifer decided to tell the truth when offered a plea deal that would reduce her sentence to life in prison for incitement to murder. She confessed that her accusations against Jamie about abuse were false, bringing relief to his family, who wanted to clear his name. On February 22, 2022, Jennifer Faith was sentenced to life in prison without parole as part of the deal. Following this, other men who had been involved with Jennifer spoke out, including Rick, who had dated her before Jamie. He recognized her manipulative nature, remembering how she had falsely accused Jamie of abuse while attempting to persuade him to take out a life insurance policy. Realizing the danger he had escaped, Rick described Jennifer as the most evil and greedy person he knew. In June 2023, Darren Lopez's trial began. Unlike Jennifer, he maintained his innocence, claiming he was manipulated by her. Evidence presented included false photos and statements alleging abuse by Jamie. Darren claimed he wanted to help Jennifer escape her troubled life, asserting that their relationship was purely friendly. His lawyer cited his post-traumatic stress disorder and a head injury from the Iraq War as contributing factors. The judge responded to the defense by stating that killing Jamie was unnecessary. Darren could have contacted law enforcement, who would have investigated the situation. He considered other options, suggesting that Jennifer run away with him, but she insisted that Jamie would keep pursuing her. Under her pressure, Darren ultimately agreed to eliminate Jamie. Attempts by Darren and his attorney to portray him as a victim were unsuccessful. At 51 years old, Darren was sentenced to 6 years in prison, with the possibility of parole in 2051. Today, we dive into a case that is as tragic as it is haunting. The sudden disappearance of 22-year-old Mercedes Vega in Arizona. In April 2023, she was last seen leaving her apartment in Tempe. Just hours later, her car was found abandoned, and what investigators uncovered would shock an entire community. Mercedes' story is a chilling reminder of how quickly a normal evening can turn into a nightmare, how safety can be shattered in an instant, and how one young woman's dreams and future were stolen in a way that still demands justice. But the question remains, who was behind this? Was it a random act of violence, or something far more calculated, designed to silence her forever? Watch this video until the end. As we explore Mercedes' final moments together, we'll uncover disturbing evidence and surprising twists that reveal a crime that's darker and more intentional than you could ever imagine. Mercedes Vega was born on March 10, 2001, in Anchorage, Alaska. She loved horses and had a special affection for babies. Finding joy in the simple pleasures of life, in 2007, when she was 6, her mother, Erica, began dating Tom Pillsbury. Over time, she and Tom formed a close bond. Just before Erica and Tom's wedding in 2010, Mercedes gave him a Father's Day card that he still remembers fondly, which said that she loved that he was marrying her mom. This gesture highlighted their strong connection. As she grew up, Mercedes pursued her interests with passion. She played the violin, sang beautifully, and even performed the national anthem at various events. Academically, she excelled, earning straight A's throughout her early school years. Swimming was another of her talents. She felt a strong connection to the ocean, once expressing that her soul belonged in Hawaii. This love for the sea mirrored her free-spirited nature, always seeking places where she felt at peace. Mercedes' family was central to her life. Her parents, Erica and Tom, raised her in a supportive environment, eventually settling in Santan Valley, Arizona. By her early 22nd, Mercedes had moved to Tempe and was living independently in the Aubrey apartments. She worked as an exotic dancer in Phoenix a few nights each week to support herself while pursuing her larger dreams of opening her own gym and becoming a personal trainer. About 3 years before her disappearance, she encountered a traumatic experience. In October 2020, she was the victim of an armed robbery outside her apartment in Phoenix, which led her to relocate to Tempe for a fresh start. She cooperated fully with the police, identified the suspect, and provided an impact statement. This incident showcased her resilience, as she used the experience to strengthen her focus on her independence and ambitions. However, on that ordinary Sunday in April 2023, her life took a tragic turn. On the 16th of April, she had planned to have dinner with friends, a routine social outing amidst her work obligations. However, as the day went on, she informed her friends that she would need to go to the club instead, where she performed a few nights each week. This change in plans became significant, as it marked Mercedes' last known communication. Initially, it seemed like a simple adjustment, but it would later serve as an important detail in the events that unfolded. Surveillance cameras at her apartment complex, the Aubrey, captured footage that helped piece together the end of her evening. Investigators noted that a white 2018 Chevrolet Malibu with a salvage title, a car not belonging to her, was spotted in the parking garage around 8:45 p.m., lingering in the area. Then, at about 9:15 p.m., Mercedes was seen on surveillance video, walking confidently towards her own vehicle in her assigned parking spot. This would become the last recorded image of her in that familiar place. Later evidence from the scene showed signs of a struggle. Blood was found in the parking lot and on the front passenger seat of the car, suggesting that she had been attacked. As time passed, Around 9:25 p.m., cameras in the area captured her car pulling into a nearby lot next to a restaurant called Culinary Dropout. Just a short drive from her apartment, the car was parked improperly, with the keys still inside, suggesting it may have been abandoned in a hurry. As the clock struck midnight on the 17th of April, an alarming situation unfolded far from Tempe. In a remote area of desert along Interstate 10 near Tanipa, about 60 miles west, where traffic becomes sparse and the landscape stretches wide, a passing driver noticed something unusual off the freeway. A vehicle had gone off the road and was in a ditch, with flames flickering inside. Concerned, the driver stopped and called 911 to report what he had seen, providing crucial information for the investigation. During the call, he informed the dispatcher that he wanted to report a car on fire that was off the side of the northbound lanes on Iminus 10 around the 85 mile marker. He stated that it was down in the bushes but that he saw flames inside the vehicle. He also mentioned that there might be people outside the vehicle and that he believed he saw at least one person. This detail suggested some activity around the car just before or during the fire, adding complexity to the investigation. The dispatchers recorded the report and quickly sent emergency crews to the scene, where firefighters worked to extinguish the flames engulfing the Chevrolet Malibu, which had been in Mercedes's garage just hours earlier. After the fire was controlled, responders looked inside the burned car and made a grim discovery: a body in the back seat, severely affected by the heat and smoke. Further examination of the vehicle revealed 2 bottles of bleach in the front seat, lighter fluid, and latex gloves, which indicated possible foul play rather than an accident. The car was not reported stolen, and its salvage status complicated efforts to uncover its history. Authorities secured the area, blocking off the ditch and roadside to collect any evidence the fire hadn't destroyed. Later that same day, they confirmed the victim's identity through fingerprints, linking the case back to Tempe. The victim was identified as Mercedes Vega, who was far from home under mysterious circumstances. Detectives from the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office took over the investigation, analyzing the 911 call for any auditory clues and interviewing the caller for more details about his view of the scene. They carefully mapped out the timeline, starting from garage footage, showing 2 cars leaving together, to the abandoned vehicle near a restaurant where the keys were still inside, and finally to the burning car in the desert. Each aspect raised new questions about how Mercedes had ended up there and what had occurred during those hours. The site itself painted a grim picture. The Chevrolet Malibu was awkwardly positioned in the ditch, with its interior burned and the backseat area showing significant damage. Responders noted the position of the body, observing that it appeared to have been placed there rather than being the result of a crash. The bleach bottles, one of which was partially used, were found in the front area, alongside a container of lighter fluid, suggesting a possible attempt to speed up a fire. Besides the individual who called 911, no other witnesses reported seeing the car on the road, but traffic cameras along Interstate 10 were reviewed for any evidence of its westward journey. Forensic teams examined the Chevrolet Malibu, which was stored in a secure lot, in hopes of collecting DNA and fingerprint evidence from the ashes. The caller mentioned seeing someone outside, prompting searches in the surrounding brush for footprints or discarded items. Though the dry terrain made it difficult to find clear tracks, Mercedes's phone records were subpoenaed to trace her last communications, and investigators inspected her car's interior for clues beyond the bloodstains. That evening, around 7:00 p.m., Mercedes's parents, Erica and Tom, returned home from a vacation in the Caribbean to find police at their door. They asked whether Mercedes lived with them, and after Erica repeatedly questioned if she was okay, they delivered the devastating news of her death. Caught completely off guard, especially after their last phone conversation during their trip, they experienced profound heartbreak, with Erica describing it as feeling like her soul was being ripped out. In their grief, the family shared details about Mercedes's habits to assist investigators in understanding what might have led her into danger that night. With a timeline established for the tragic evening, Detectives from the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office faced the challenging task of piecing together how a young woman could disappear from her secure apartment garage and be found in a burned-out car approximately 60 miles away. The investigation continued for months, then years. With many challenges testing their patience and resources, forensic teams meticulously sifted through the ash of the charred Malibu for DNA, fingerprints, and any overlooked items. It was a slow process. The autopsy report from the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's Office was not released until October 2023, 6 months after the body was discovered. It revealed that Mercedes had suffered a gunshot wound to her arm, multiple blows to her head, causing blunt force trauma, and chemical burns from bleach poured on her face and throat. Tragically, she was still alive when the fire started, with the official cause of death listed as smoke inhalation and thermal injuries, classified as a homicide. This delay in the findings added to the frustration, compounded by the slow progress of the case, which saw few public updates for over a year. Investigators interviewed those close to Mercedes. Focusing on her routines and relationships, her parents emphasized her independence and reported no known conflicts in her life. Although they couldn't ignore the lasting impact of a prior armed robbery in Phoenix, they felt that the investigation lagged, partly due to biases. Tom expressed in interviews that her part-time job as a dancer at a club seemed to diminish her importance in the eyes of the police. Sergeant Joaquin Enriquez countered that all cases are treated fairly, regardless of profession. Friends and colleagues from the club spoke highly of her reliability, confirming her last-minute shift plan and noting she had no visible enemies there. They mentioned that she had been cautious after previous incidents, but there were no recent warnings of danger. The investigation turned its focus to Mercedes's past, particularly an armed robbery on October 12, 2020, which had left her so shaken that she moved to Tempe. Early that morning, a man confronted her at gunpoint outside her apartment in Phoenix, demanding her belongings. He got away with cash and personal items. Phoenix police conducted an investigation, and Mercedes fully cooperated, identifying Cujo Young as the robber in a lineup and providing a statement that detailed her trauma. Cujo Young, who faces armed robbery charges, has faced numerous delays in the case, largely due to changing attorneys and negotiating plea deals. He fluctuated between rejecting and accepting plea deals. Mercedes was prepared to testify against him, with a trial date set for mid-April 2023. Court records indicate she was scheduled to testify on April 17, the day her body was discovered. Although some reports suggest this was the day before she went missing, the timing of these events raised questions about whether the upcoming testimony influenced the situation. During the crucial hours in April 2023, when Mercedes was kidnapped and murdered, Cujo was not at either location. As records indicate, he was not in custody. Due to delays in a robbery case, he had no confirmed presence in Tempe, where Mercedes was taken, or in Tonopah, where her body was found. Theories of random crime diminished while the idea of a planned attack gained traction. Family and friends emphasized Mercedes's increased caution since 2020, highlighting the importance of her connections. Erica expressed her frustration in the media, suggesting the motive was to prevent testimony. As the investigation progressed, uncovering digital evidence and forensic links, the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office eventually made arrests, revealing long-awaited names. The first significant breakthrough occurred on November 11, 2024, when Sincere Hayes was arrested in Hamilton County, Tennessee. At that time, Sincere, a 22-year-old resident of Chattanooga, was already in custody for unrelated charges. Maricopa County Sheriff's Office detectives connected him to the case through a fingerprint that matched one found on a bloody plastic grocery bag in Mercedes's abandoned car, a match that had remained unresolved until his arrest in May 2024 added his prints to the database. After being extradited to Arizona later that month, Sincere had his first court appearance where he pleaded not guilty. The judge set a cash bond of $2 million. During questioning, he admitted to knowing Cujo Young from their hometown of Chattanooga and verified that he had traveled to Arizona for business. Though he refused to disclose details about it, Censera had a history of legal issues that began at age 18, with his adult record starting in May 2021 in DeKalb County, Alabama, for possessing a stolen firearm and a banned substance, which led to an indictment in February 2022. This case was dismissed on April 10, 2023, just days before Mercedes' death, after he failed to attend his arraignment, although the warrant was later lifted. In May 2024, Chattanooga police arrested Censera again following a report of shots fired, discovering he had several weapons, one of which was stolen. After being released on a $5,000 bond, he was arrested weeks later by Hamilton County Sheriff's Office for DUI, speeding, and illegal possession of a firearm. The investigation expanded further in June 2025 when Jared DeMarcus Gray, a 25-year-old from Tennessee, was arrested in Catoosa County, Georgia. Jared's fingerprint was found on a plastic cup inside the burned Malibu, where Mercedes' body was located. He awaited extradition to Arizona while being held on unrelated charges, with prosecutors seeking a $2 million cash-only bond. In interviews, Jared claimed he was in Arizona for business, but denied knowing Censera or Cudjoe, despite travel records showing he and Censera flew together from Tennessee to Phoenix on March 3, 2023, and took a Greyhound bus back on April 18, the day after the fire. Although Jared's criminal history was less extensive than Censera's, he was tied to the crime scene through DNA and cell phone data that matched Tonopah's route. On July 24, 2025, a grand jury in Maricopa County indicted Cudjoe Young, 29, who was already in custody on an unrelated warrant. Cudjoe appeared in court shortly after, stating he would represent himself and acknowledging the judge's warning about being held to the same standards as a lawyer. He pleaded not guilty, with the judge setting his bond at $2 million cash only. Cudjoe's history was significant. He was identified by Mercedes in a 2020 armed robbery where she had picked him from a lineup after being held at gunpoint outside her Phoenix apartment. This case faced numerous delays, often due to Cudjoe changing attorneys, causing frustration for her family. Additionally, Cudjoe was facing 10 counts in a separate investigation into banned substance trafficking, accused of running a nationwide operation involving illegal banned substances, money laundering, and conspiracy. All three men faced serious charges. Censera was charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, armed robbery, theft of a vehicle, arson, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and hindering prosecution. Prosecutors sought the death penalty for him, citing the brutality and depraved motive of the crime. Jared was charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, armed robbery, and vehicle theft. Cudjoe faced charges for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, first-degree murder, armed robbery, arson, and theft of transportation. The main motive in this case was to silence a witness. Investigators believe that Cudjoe planned this scheme to stop Mercedes from testifying against him in the 2020 robbery trial. Records indicate he paid for the flights of Censera and Jared using a credit card, hired accomplices to retrieve the Malibu car under a false name, and contacted someone to collect a package near the site of a fire that night. This deliberate effort to eliminate her as a threat connected the three individuals, turning a past crime into a serious conspiracy. Censera was the first to be arrested, and his case progressed steadily, although slowly. After being extradited and entering a not guilty plea in late 2024, prosecutors announced in May 2025 their intention to seek the death penalty if convicted. They cited the brutality of the crime and its goal of obstructing justice by silencing a witness. Censera's lawyers pushed back during court meetings, arguing against the death penalty and questioning the strength of the forensic evidence, such as the fingerprint found on a grocery bag. They emphasized his youth and lack of prior violent offenses, portraying his involvement as minor rather than significant. A tentative trial date for Censera was initially set for July 31, 2025, but court documents revealed it had been postponed due to ongoing evidence, review, and motions. With the next status hearing planned for later that year, Jared's case was delayed as he awaited extradition from Georgia after his arrest in June 2025, where he was held on a $2 million bond. His case revolves around fingerprints found on a plastic cup in the Malibu and matching DNA evidence. His defense indicated plans to challenge the integrity of the evidence, claiming possible contamination or errors in identification, and pointed out his limited criminal history as reason to doubt his leading role. The state requested fast extradition, arguing that the interconnected nature of the cases required them to proceed together in Maricopa County. Cujo's involvement complicated matters further because of his connection to the earlier robbery. He was indicted on July 24, 2025, facing the same main charges, with prosecutors claiming he was the mastermind behind the plot. He also used a credit card to book flights and directed others to obtain the Malibu under a fake name. Cujo pleaded not guilty during his murder arraignment on the 1st of August, alongside Sinceri, and maintained his innocence while questioning the conspiracy claims in brief statements. For the Mercedes family, including Eric's and Tom Pillsbury, these developments elicited mixed feelings amid their deep sorrow. They regularly attended court hearings and voiced their frustrations about the system's failures to protect Mercedes like their daughter, who had moved after the robbery only to face further dangers. Erica described the waiting as torturous, stating in interviews that the family felt anxious while waiting for justice. The announcement of the death penalty brought them some relief, with Tom noting it lightened their burden and confirmed they weren't alone in their fight. However, the pain of their loss continued. They scattered Mercedes's ashes in Hawaii, her favorite place, and Alaska, honoring the locations that held significance for her. In the months that followed, the family dedicated their efforts to advocacy, determined to keep her memory alive. They collaborated with Silent Witness and engaged with the media to seek answers and justice. A GoFundMe page remains active to help cover their expenses and support their efforts. They welcome any contributions from those who wish to assist. Currently, all three defendants, Cujo Young, Sincere Hayes, and Jared Gray, are entangled in the court system, having been indicted and pleaded not guilty. Their cases are still actively under judicial review, and the legal process continues. For everyone following this story, it is not over yet. The pursuit of justice is still in progress, and the final outcome has yet to be determined. In a small town in Indiana, where people still pass on a chilling saying, "If you want to kill someone and get away with it, do it in Lawrence County." It was in that land that 19 years old Brooke Baker was brutally murdered in her own apartment, leaving behind a bloody and horrifying scene. Who was the killer? The answer did not come immediately. The case fell into a deadlock until 2 years later, when another female student, Erica Norman, disappeared under similar circumstances. It was then that the criminal link gradually emerged, bringing with it the shocking truth about the murderer lurking in everyday life. This is not just a story about a murder. This is a journey filled with blood and tears, where justice is challenged, and the truth is paid for with the lives of young girls. To understand why Brooke Baker's death was so shocking, we need to go back in time to the childhood and life of a little girl who carried within her dreams, aspirations, and a tragic fate. Brooke Baker was born on April 24, 1978, and was very close to her younger brother and parents. Since childhood, she has loved learning. She dreamed of leaving her small town in Indiana, specifically Lawrence County, which was quite different from typical suburban neighborhoods. Lawrence County was known for its danger. Several murders had occurred there, all unsolved, leading to a dark saying, "If you want to kill someone and get away with it, do it in Lawrence." Unfortunately, the family could not afford to move to a safer place. The Brooke family struggled financially, and high-paying jobs were scarce. Her parents took any opportunity to earn money, but this made her unhappy. She wanted to help her family and dreamed of a better life. Throughout school, She thought about securing a stable job and often discussed her ambitious plans. Her best friend, Shauna, admired her determination and willingness to take action. She was very active and embraced new opportunities, such as writing for the school newspaper and exploring journalism programs at local universities. Shauna praised Brooke's writing after reading one of her articles, which encouraged her to pursue a journalism degree as a first step toward her career goals. She applied to the University of Vincennes in the small town of Vincennes and was thrilled to be accepted. Her friends and family were proud of her achievements. Once at university, she was eager to contribute to the university newspaper, a significant multimedia project for students. Shauna also enrolled at the same university, and they continued to support each other in their journalism studies while gaining experience in teamwork. Brooke maintained her close relationships with her family, and her younger brother Braun often visited her on campus. Even though he was still in high school, Brooke enjoyed socializing and had a knack for connecting with diverse people, which sometimes puzzled her friends. She casually dated multiple guys simultaneously, believing it was simply a way of exploring her options. After moving to campus, Brooke shared a room with a guy named Jason, and they quickly became friends, developing a close bond. However, Brooke soon became interested in another guy named Steve, who reciprocated her feelings. Their relationship developed over time but was marked by ups and downs, resulting in several breakups and reconciliations during their first year. Despite the turbulence in her love life, Brooke became the permanent editor of the student newspaper. At only 18, her talent was recognized, making her the youngest editor in the publication's history. During her tenure, Brooke's writing style evolved. She began to focus on complex and controversial topics, creating articles that provoked readers. While these traits may be useful for a journalist, her focus on sensational issues has led some to question her motives. There were accusations that she had intentionally infiltrated groups to gather information. Although this suspicion did not greatly affect her friendships, some people ridiculed her behind her back and accused her of fabricating information. As her sophomore year began, Brooke seemed to have found a compelling story that she really wanted to write for the paper. It all started back in the spring of 1997, when she first showed up on campus. Immediately, she shows the determination of an investigative journalist, trying to find out the truth about many stories. Perhaps overestimating their consequences, she expressed to her colleagues that she wanted to write a serious article, so she decided to learn about the fraternity, a group that only accepts elite members rich, smart, and influential. This made her very curious, because she knew that this fraternity kept a lot of secrets and had a great influence on student life. Brooke quickly realized that this fraternity was like any other in the student societies. To become a member, students first had to apply one as said. After that, the rest of the organization would review the application and get to know the student. At this stage, the student could either receive support or be rejected outright. After that, the checks began. A harmless mission from the members of the society can turn into a serious situation. Brooke heard that girls can be coerced into engaging in intimate behavior at the gathering. She believed that the victims were hiding the truth out of fear of the consequences. Already in the spring of 1997, Brooke came across several girls who had suffered at the hands of the fraternity members but were afraid to talk about it. She was on the side of the victims and wanted to help them. Even the professors were supportive of her pursuit, although some thought it was dangerous and advised her to be careful. Naturally, information about the ongoing investigation gradually reached the members of the fraternity, who began to look at Brooke with distrust and concern. Their attitude towards her worsened. It was curious that her neighbor, Jason, was a member of this very fraternity, and he knew everything that was going on there. For Brooke, and this was an exciting discovery, and she tried to get Jason to join her at the frat parties, knowing that this would be her best source of information. Brooke quickly learned that the fraternity's favorite day for parties was Thursday. They organized the biggest events that started in the evening and could last until the morning. In August 1997, Brooke decided to put her plans into action. She invited Shauna to join the group. In addition, there was a guy named Brian in the group. She met him a short time before these events. She didn't care about drinking or dancing, but mostly asked the partygoers questions like journalists and took notes for future articles. She was unaware that they had been closely watched the entire time. Several members of the fraternity were observing and listening to ensure that she did not go too far in her investigation. After this party, friends from Brooke's inner circle started receiving threatening notes. They all tried to warn her. All of this happened at a time when Brooke had gained sufficient independence. She told everyone who was worried about her that she could now move out of Jason's house and live separately. So she has nothing to fear. She found an apartment right across from the journalism department. At the same time, she received even more support from a married couple who were professors at the institution. However, after moving out, she still could not escape the direct threat. She tried to stay calm because her apartment belonged to a school security officer. At that time, the threats Brooke faced were not only verbal but also came through email. While visiting a friend, a group of men in a pickup truck showed up at the house and threatened her. When her parents found out, her mother urged her to stop the investigation. However, she was determined to continue. Members of the fraternity openly threatened her, saying she would face dire consequences if she didn't stop her inquiries. As the fall semester started in 1997, Brooke had moved into a new apartment, giving her a sense of relief. With just 1 year left at university, she planned to transfer to a school in New York. During this time, she mostly left her apartment only for social events and focused on writing articles to gain experience as a journalist. Brooke was deeply involved in investigating an incident involving a campus girl who claimed she had been assaulted and abused by a fraternity member. The victim agreed to an exclusive interview at the end of the second week of September. However, that meeting never took place. On September 7, 1997, the Indiana State Police received a call from Brooke's younger brother, Brown Baker. He told them in a trembling voice that he had found her injured body in her apartment. Braun often visited Brooke and had just spoken to one of her classmates, who complained about being unable to reach her. He promised to deliver some documents to her. When Braun arrived at her apartment and knocked, there was no response, but he heard noises inside. Using a spare key, he entered and found the apartment dark and quiet. Calling for her, he instead heard footsteps that suggested someone was fleeing. Assuming she was in the shower because of the sound of running water, he called out again but received no reply. When he noticed the bathroom door was slightly open, he went in to find a towel scattered on the floor but no sign of Brooke. He then entered her bedroom and discovered her lifeless body on the mattress, her eyes wide open and her expression frozen in fear. In shock, Braun immediately called the police, who then launched a murder investigation. Forensics determined that Brooke had been dead for some time based on the rigor mortis. They found no signs of forced entry. In the bathroom, investigators discovered a towel and a nearly empty bottle of bleach, both possibly used to clean the crime scene. A blood-stained knife was found under the sink, along with other bloody objects, possibly involved in the murder. The fatal wounds were to her chest, indicating that the attacker had used significant force. Signs of abuse were also present. DNA evidence and bloodstains from a struggle were collected. Brooke's body was sent for an autopsy while investigators began interviewing her friends and those close to her. Some friends, including her parents, wanted to see the scene for themselves, but police denied entry. During questioning, Braun mentioned Brooke's boyfriend, Steve Hoffman, who emerged as a primary suspect. Statistics indicated that many victims are killed by someone they know. Neighbors were interviewed, and the journalism department was shaken by the news. Many female students began avoiding going out in the evenings for fear of their safety, with pepper spray becoming a common item for protection. Detectives were reconstructing the events of September 6, 1997, a day when Brooke was particularly active. She visited several places, both on and off campus, and met Steve at 3:00 p.m. They spent several hours together, including time at a local fast food restaurant. By 7:00 p.m., another acquaintance, Biff Elite, had joined them. Biff was a friend of Brooke's, and they played softball together. they attended a small concert by a local band, which Brooke planned to write an article about. Later, around 9 p.m., Brooke arrived at a party where she encountered another acquaintance named Tommy. Tommy mentioned that they broke up after 10:30 p.m. However, by 12:30 a.m., Brooke was at another party and eventually left with someone named Brian Jones. Witnesses reported that Brooke was heading back to her apartment, marking the last sighting of her alive. The medical examiner noted that at least 19 hours had passed between her death and the time when Brian found her body. An autopsy revealed she had been brutally attacked, suffering numerous bruises and 13 stab wounds to her chest and back. With both lungs punctured, she had also been abused and strangled. The murder weapon, a steak knife, was found under the bathroom sink, and DNA testing indicated it contained blood and tissue matching Brooke. Despite testing biological fluids found on her body, there were no matches in the DNA database. Police questioned Steve, who denied having a serious relationship with Brooke, suggesting she might have been dating multiple people. His casual attitude towards their relationship raised suspicions about his involvement, potentially indicating a love triangle motive. However, he maintained a solid alibi. Detectives then approached Tommy, who voluntarily approached police to share what he knew, expressed concern, and admitted to having engaged in consensual intimacy with Brooke that evening. Tommy's situation was complicated by the lack of a solid alibi, as the first person to confirm his whereabouts didn't see him until after 3 a.m. He willingly provided a DNA sample. Brooke's mother shared insights about the security guard from whom Brooke rented her apartment. Initially, he seemed nice, but over time, she felt uneasy around him. After a few months, Brooke expressed fears that he wanted more than just a landlord-tenant relationship. At one point, he even suggested free rent in exchange for intimacy. Other women who had rented from the same landlord reported similar inappropriate proposals. Although he denied the allegations during police questioning and passed a polygraph test, he could not be ruled out due to the absence of a confirmed alibi. Detectives investigated about 100 potential suspects, mostly students, including fraternity members, but found no matches. Meanwhile, Brooke's family launched an activism campaign to raise safety awareness in Lawrence County. They shared photos of their daughter alongside images of other victims from previous years, leading to regular community meetings focused on local safety and law enforcement efforts. This increased public interest in the case, with many wanting to contribute to the investigation. One individual, named Deborah, came forward to report that Brooke had received threatening emails traced back to 2 fraternity members. However, DNA comparisons did not match those found on the attacker. There were also rumors concerning Brooke that were later revealed to be exaggerated. Brooke's drafts included hundreds of notes, and they were thoroughly reviewed by the police. They interviewed a girl who reported an abuse, but she was heavily intoxicated at the time. She later admitted that the intimacy was consensual. Detectives realized that Brooke might have fabricated the story for attention. They tested the DNA of hundreds of people, including fraternity members, but none matched the assailant's DNA. The investigation stalled as they interviewed over 500 individuals with no results. Despite this, Brooke's family held on to hope for clarity regarding their daughter's death. 2 years later, on July 5, 1999, police were called to an apartment just 7 blocks from Brooke's location after a neighbor reported suspicious sounds coming from Erica Norman's apartment. Erica, a university student born on November 13, 1977, was known for being athletic, participating in sports and the drama club. By 1999, at age 21, she had aspirations to move to Honduras to help others and advance her studies in languages, believing it would lead to greater opportunities. Upon arrival, the neighbor found the bathroom taps running, which he turned off to prevent flooding. Upon inspecting further, he discovered blood on the wall and immediately contacted the police. Officers found signs of a struggle, but Erica was missing. They noted similarities to Brooke's case from 2 years earlier and began investigating Erica's acquaintances to piece together the sequence of events. Erica was last seen on July 3 at a party, intending to leave early for rest. Brian Jones, the last person to see her, walked her home after working together at a local restaurant. Brian, a university student who had not graduated, claimed he visited Erica but left when she fell asleep during a movie. He cooperated with the police and did not seem suspicious. However, detectives delved deeper into his background. Suspecting a potential connection to Brooke's case, they uncovered that Brian had lived with Jason, a man linked to Brooke, in the fall of 1997, around the time of Brooke's murder. Notably, Brian left town soon after Brooke's body was discovered on September 7, 1997. Jason had submitted DNA samples, but Brian had not. This withdrawal raised further concerns, especially when it was revealed that Brian had been fired from his job on September 10, 1997. Due to multiple absences, Erica's body remained missing, but Brian continued to cooperate with investigators, even providing the clothes he wore on the night she disappeared. Small drops of blood were discovered on Brian's shoes. To confirm that the blood belonged to Erica, DNA testing was conducted using samples from her parents. Meanwhile, Brian's clothing, which he had given to the police, underwent a more detailed examination, yielding DNA evidence. 2 days later, the lab reported that this DNA was a 100% match to DNA found at the scene of Brooke Baker's 1997 murder, indicating that both Brooke and Erica were victims of the same killer. Additionally, Brian's DNA also matched. Consequently, on July 13, 1999, Brian Jones was arrested for the murder of 19-year-old Brooke Baker. He immediately refused to cooperate and requested a lawyer. The evidence collected made it easier to piece together what happened. However, Erica's body was still missing, which posed a significant challenge. The focus shifted back to the Brooke Baker family. Her parents were upset, and her mother was so aggressive that Brian had to be brought into the courthouse wearing a bulletproof vest. In response to the tense atmosphere, he confessed to killing Erica and indicated an approximate location for the police to search, but they were unable to find her. He maintained his innocence regarding Brooke's death and informed the judge that he intended to hire a lawyer. A week later, on July 20, a man from Illinois contacted the police after discovering remains in his cornfield. The body was decomposed, making identification difficult, but it was suspected to be Erica's. A wallet found nearby contained a driver's license with Erica's name, which helped the police in the identification process. Blood from her was discovered in Brian's car. In December 2000, he was charged with another murder. During Brooke Baker's trial, the defense attempted to argue that the intimate behavior was consensual. However, Brian's story continued to change, and ultimately, after 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found him guilty on all counts. By this point, Brian Jones had already pleaded guilty to Erica's murder and received a 60-year sentence. Following the verdict for Brooke's murder, he was given an additional life sentence without the possibility of parole. After that, the campus killings ceased. It was past midnight when something strange happened. A dog was sniffing the ground near a quiet riverbank. Suddenly, an unmistakable, pungent stench rose from the ground. Something terrible was buried there. What followed was a horrifying discovery. The bodies of the girls so decomposed that they could only be identified by their feet, all bound, their throats slit, and their mouths gagged. Just days earlier, the 3 young women had set off on what was supposed to be a fun trip. They told their families they were going to the beach with friends, but they never returned. What happened to them? The answer would shock the nation. The truth was darker and more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. In the heart of Santo Domingo, Ecuador, 3 young women, Juliana Macias, Denise Reina, and Nayeli Tapia, were full of dreams and ambitions. They had met through mutual friends, and their connection grew quickly, rooted in their shared passions for music, modeling, and a better future. Juliana, nicknamed Syria after the Greek goddess, was known for her intelligence, determination, and cheerful spirit. She excelled in school, earning the honor of being her class's flag bearer. But her true passion was music. With a strong singing voice and big ambitions, she dreamed of studying psychology, becoming a famous singer, and traveling the world. At just 21, Juliana was already performing solo, singing at political events, and had recently joined a band called Las Diablitas. To her, success felt closer than ever. Nayeli, 22, was admired for her warmth and generosity. A devoted young mother to her 4-year-old daughter, she had moved from Quito to Santo Domingo to live with her sister. Between modeling gigs and caring for her little girl, she dreamed of moving to Spain, believing it would open doors to a brighter future. No matter how busy life got, being a mother always came first for her. Denise, only 19, was a kind and thoughtful young woman studying agricultural engineering. She loved helping others and once dreamed of opening a veterinary clinic, but later focused on finishing her degree. Her new goal was to move to the United States and build a fresh start. She always thought ahead, carefully planning her future. But even the best-laid plans can't prepare someone for what's to come. On Tuesday, April 4, 2023, their lives took a devastating turn. Around 9 a.m., a black car arrived at Denise's house. She had been invited on a trip to the Casablanca Hotel, a resort by the coast. Something inside her hesitated. She didn't feel right about going. But despite her unease, she got into the car. Later that day, she and the driver picked up Nayeli, who had just returned to Santo Domingo. That afternoon, both young women reassured their families. They were heading to the coast with friends. That night, they picked up Juliana, who told her grandmother she was going to meet a friend. What began as an innocent late-night road trip was about to spiral into tragedy. At 11:10 p.m., Nayeli sent her sister a live location with a chilling note. She was sharing it just in case. Moments later, her phone went silent. No calls, no replies. The sudden, heavy silence was the first sign that something was terribly wrong. Elsewhere that same night, Denise also reached out to a close friend. Her message carried a haunting weight. She admitted she had a bad feeling, that something awful might happen, and if it did, she wanted her friend to know just how much she loved her. As the night stretched into the early hours of the 5th of April, one of Denise's relatives received a message claiming she was still with Nayeli and some friends. Around the same time, Juliana uploaded a video status. The girls were in a car, singing, smiling, their voices blending with the music that filled the night. Then, silence. Morning came, but the girls did not return. Their phones went dead. No posts, no calls, no trace. Their families, gripped by panic and confusion, waited desperately for news that never came. On Wednesday, the 5th of April, Juliana's aunt, Rueda, a well-known women's rights activist, took the first step. She went straight to the authorities and reported her niece missing. A day later, on Thursday, the 6th of April, a group of fishermen made a horrifying discovery near a riverbank. One of their dogs began digging furiously at disturbed earth. As the men approached, a foul stench filled the air. Beneath the soil lay the partial remains of a body. Police rushed to the scene. When investigators began digging, they quickly realized the horror was far greater. There wasn't just one body. There were 3, all bound at the wrists, all showing signs of torture. The injuries were deep, savage, and clearly caused by sharp weapons, likely machetes. Forensic teams worked quickly to recover the bodies and transport them for autopsy. The confirmation came within hours. The victims were Denise Reina, 19, Juliana Macias, 21, and Nayeli Tapia, 22. 2 of them had been found with their mouths taped shut, dressed in light beachwear, bathing suits and shorts. The news devastated their families. Many had still believed the girls would return home alive. Instead, they were met with the unimaginable reality of walking into a morgue. Paulina, always at the forefront, handled the identification of Juliana, but the injuries to her face were so severe that she could only be recognized by the shape of her toes. In the days that followed, the families gathered, piecing together every detail of what they knew from that night. Whispers of something sinister surfaced. They believed the killers might have used chemicals to speed up decomposition. Some even feared acid had been involved. Authorities, however, remained tight-lipped. One official said the forensic results were confidential. Another dismissed the acid theory as speculation from grieving relatives. The public was shaken. News of the murders spread quickly, igniting outrage across Ecuador. Social media flooded with grief, anger, and demands for justice. Photos of the three young women, once symbols of joy and promise, now became a national outcry. Their families were vocal, insisting the investigation must continue until the truth was uncovered and those responsible were held accountable. As investigators pressed forward, early theories began to take shape. Then, the autopsy results arrived, and they confirmed the worst fears. The examination revealed that all three had died from deep slash wounds to the neck, inflicted by a sharp, bladed weapon. Their bodies bore unmistakable signs of torture, details almost too horrific to speak aloud. On the 9th of April, 2023, the families laid their daughters to rest in Santo Domingo. The funerals were heartbreaking, filled with tears and tributes. Family and friends chose to remember them for the happiness they brought to others during their lives. During the service, Paulina Rueda, Juliana Meisha's aunt, was approached and threatened by a man in a cap and mask. Before she could respond, he disappeared into the crowd. The threat sent waves of fear through the grieving families. For days, Nayeli and Denise's relatives pulled back from the media, choosing silence over danger. But Paulina refused to be silenced. She went public with the threat and requested inclusion in Ecuador's witness protection program. Authorities initially promised to accompany the families and evaluate their case. But according to Paulina, protection never came. Even so, the fight for justice only grew stronger. Despite fear and uncertainty, the families of all three young women eventually stepped forward to speak with a local news outlet. They shared memories, stories, and the dreams that Juliana, Nayeli, and Denise would never have the chance to fulfill. None of them knew who the friends were, that the girls were supposed to meet that night. All they wanted were answers, justice, and closure. They also pleaded with the public to come forward with any information that might help identify those responsible. But as their voices grew louder, so did the noise. Online rumors began to swirl. One particularly cruel claim suggested the girls may have been linked to banned substance trafficking. Paulina quickly shut those allegations down, making it clear there was no evidence to support such rumors and urging the public not to spread misinformation that only distracted from the investigation. A video added further fuel to the fire. It showed Juliana singing at a bar alongside a man named Roberto Zambrano and a small group of others. Some insisted it had been filmed just hours before the murders. But Roberto himself stepped forward, clarifying that the video was recorded weeks earlier during his birthday celebration. He had nothing to do with the crime. Still, the damage to his name was severe. His career, reputation, and family life were thrown into chaos, forcing him to announce plans to file a defamation lawsuit. Paulina confirmed his account, stressing that the video was completely unrelated to the case. As time went on, more rumors surfaced, some collapsing under the weight of evidence, others fading into silence. Meanwhile, investigators pressed forward. Then came a breakthrough. Police identified the black vehicle that had picked up the girls. It was a rental car, using GPS data. They reconstructed the route taken that night. Every turn, every stop, every mile traveled before the murders. Near the site of the shallow graves, they uncovered a crucial piece of evidence. One of the victims' cell phones, abandoned by the killers. It would soon become a key element in the pursuit of justice. In the wake of national outrage, Ecuador's Attorney General's office activated its official protocol for investigating femicides and violent crimes against women. The brutality of the case had horrified the nation, and now every eye was fixed on the investigation. Journalists followed every lead, and every new detail became headline news. Yet behind the scenes, progress was difficult. Much of the case remained under wraps. Officials announced that the full investigative report would remain sealed for at least 1 year. The lead prosecutor admitted that the remote location of the crime posed major obstacles. There were no nearby security cameras and no eyewitnesses, or at least none willing to speak. But the silence would not last forever. Soon, investigators reported another breakthrough. Through security footage, emergency response systems, and cooperation from local residents, they identified 2 men who had been seen with the victims on the 4th of April. These men became prime suspects. Still, investigators remained guarded, needing time to compile enough technical evidence to hold up in court. Meanwhile, the families refused to remain quiet. On May 3rd, nearly a month after the disappearances, they organized a massive demonstration, a white march, held on Friday, May 6th. Rueda, always leading from the front, declared that the march was not only about demanding justice, but also about urging the nation to stop normalizing violence against women. She vowed they would not rest until the killers were behind bars. Then came a dramatic announcement. In a police operation code named Armageddon, the Minister of the Interior confirmed the arrest of 2 men, believed to be directly responsible for the murders. Brothers André Zambrano, 27, and Holger Zambrano, 34. The pair had been attempting to flee toward the Peruvian border. One of them already had a criminal record for extortion. A judge swiftly ordered the freezing of their assets and granted extended protection measures to witnesses and the victims' families. But the case didn't end there. Investigators soon uncovered more names connected to the crime. One of them was Omar Ordóñez, a close associate of the Zambrano brothers. In November 2023, he was tracked down in a neighboring province. Omar wasn't just a friend of the brothers. He had links to a criminal organization and a past filled with illegal weapons charges. The 4th suspect, Luis Fernandez Votza, was believed to be the driver of the car that transported the girls on that tragic night. But authorities never got the chance to question him. His body was later discovered, dismembered, in what investigators called a targeted killing. At first, prosecutors filed charges of femicide, but later reclassified them as murder. The reasoning, according to court documents, there was no proof of a romantic or emotional connection between the suspects and the victims. But to Paulina, that argument was insulting. To her, it didn't matter if these men were strangers. This was violence against women in its most brutal form. Then came the courtroom battle. Holger, who rented the car, was acquitted after proving he wasn't present during the killings. But André and Omar faced trial on April 9, 2024. Prosecutors brought forward forensic reports, autopsy results, and testimonies from witnesses who had seen the accused with the victims. Even staff from the car rental agency took the stand, sealing the chain of evidence. On May 17, 2024, 1 year and 1 month after the murders, the verdict finally came down. The court sentenced André Zambrano and Omar Ordóñez to 34 years and 8 months in prison. They were also ordered to pay $300,000 in reparations to the victims' families, plus an additional fine of more than $600,000. Outside the courthouse, Paulina spoke through tears. She described the relief that swept over the families for the loved ones of Juliana, Denise, and Nayeli. It had been a year-long fight. Now, at last, they could breathe. But even then, the case wasn't closed. The defense immediately filed an appeal. On October 22, 2024, the provincial court upheld the original ruling. 34 years and 8 months behind bars for both André and Omar. It was a historic moment in Ecuador's battle against gender-based violence. Still, the defense threatened to push the case to the National Court of Justice, the last possible appeal. This case didn't just scar the nation, it sparked a movement. Juliana, Denise, and Nayeli were more than just victims. They were daughters, students, a mother, dreamers. Three women full of life and purpose. Stolen in an act of senseless cruelty, their story changed the conversation around femicide in Ecuador, and their families refused to stay silent. On a cold January afternoon in Georgia, the quiet of a small family home is shattered by a horrifying discovery. In the woods behind them, Alana Callahan lies motionless, covered in blood, her life brutally taken. But what haunts everyone is more than the violence of the scene. It's the presence of a familiar face, Aaron Schmidt, Alana's best friend, who claims to have witnessed the entire incident. He points to the body, insisting that he's just warded off a mysterious attacker dressed in black. But as investigators piece together the puzzle, Aaron's story and the crime scene begin to diverge in terrifying ways. Who really killed Alana Callahan? And why is a trusted friend at the center of the darkest suspicion? In 2011, Alana Callahan was a 14-year-old student living in Harlem, Georgia. Her family had moved there shortly before a tragic incident. Her father served in the military, and she was one of 4 siblings who were known to be friendly and tightly bonded. After relocating, Alana quickly made friends with local teenagers, and they all began attending church, gaining support from the community. Alana was viewed as a positive, well-adjusted girl who was focused on her studies and aspired to become a lawyer. Sadly, her dreams would not come to fruition. On January 31, 2011, the weather was cold. Alana attended school as usual, and her older sister, Amanda, planned to meet her at the bus stop later. Alana arrived home at 3:32 p.m. and immediately went online. At 3:45 p.m., Amanda left to pick up their younger brother Chase, who missed the first bus. When Amanda returned home shortly after, she noticed something unusual. Next to Alana's shoes in the entryway were a pair of men's boots belonging to Aaron Schmidt, a family friend. The back sliding door was wide open, which was strange given the chilly January weather. Inside, Alana's computer chair was knocked over, and Amanda spotted red drops on the floor that she initially thought were soda. However, Alana was nowhere to be found. When Amanda called for Alana and received no reply, she felt a sense of unease. Seeing bright red stains on the wall near the computer heightened her concern, and she began to feel panicked. Chase also walked in and was immediately alarmed by the strange situation. While Amanda was trying to understand what was happening, Alana's best friend, 14 years old, Aaron Schmidt, rushed into the house. He was well known to the family. He came in from the backyard, shouting that he had seen a man in black attack Alana inside the house and then drag her into the woods through the back door. He claimed he scared the attacker away, but said Alana was hurt and needed urgent help. Amanda and her younger brother Chase quickly went to the forest, following Aaron's calls. Aaron pointed out a body on the ground, but at first, no one else could see it. As they walked a short distance, they found Alana lying on the ground, covered in blood. Chase and Amanda immediately tried to help her, but she showed no signs of life. Amanda called 911 for assistance, and the operator provided instructions for cardiopulmonary resuscitation, but nothing worked. Alana remained unresponsive. Law enforcement officers arrived on the scene within minutes of the incident and attempted to help Alana, who had been shot in the head. Paramedics arrived shortly thereafter, but only confirmed that she had died. The sheriff acted quickly, sending police officers to search for the unknown attacker Aaron described, along with 2 dog teams. Detectives also began interviewing the first witnesses at the crime scene, particularly Aaron, who claimed to have seen the attacker and was acting oddly. When the police arrived, they found Amanda with blood on her hands from attempting to aid Alana, while Aaron had bloodstains only on the collar of his shirt and on his shorts. Despite claiming he got his clothes dirty helping Alana, his hands were clean, raising doubts among the detectives. Amanda was the first to be questioned. She recounted everything she had seen before finding Alana dead. Noting that Aaron was the last person to see Alana alive and the only one who had witnessed the attacker, Amanda mentioned that Aaron was not only Alana's best friend, but also a close family friend. He visited their home almost daily after school, and they often shared meals together. Amanda noted that Aaron had come from the woods where he found Alana, but she didn't hear any gunshots, which was strange. Aaron stated he tried to help Alana before calling Amanda and ended up throwing up. Initially, Amanda didn't suspect him of wrongdoing, as she had no reason to believe he would attack her sister. However, she pointed out inconsistencies in his account, which made her a key witness for the detectives. Amanda and Chase realized that Aaron shouldn't have been able to see Alana's body from where he claimed to see it. The area was blocked by thick bushes, which had already been checked by them. The detectives confirmed this information. Furthermore, while Amanda was on the phone with 911, Aaron touched Alana's body and made a peculiar comment, suggesting he was worried the police would think he was responsible for her death. This behavior raised suspicions. The medical examiner later reported that Alana had been shot in the head with a fatal wound that damaged vital arteries. The bullet was found in the living room of the house where the attack occurred, indicating that the killer had dragged Alana outside right after the shooting, resulting in minimal blood being left inside. During her discussions with law enforcement, Amanda did not appear suspicious. She was genuinely upset about her sister's death, crying as she shared her feelings. In contrast, Aaron seemed unusually calm and detached when discussing Alana's death, which raised further suspicion. Realizing how calm he was acting, he suddenly began to cry. But one of the detectives noticed he had no real tears and was merely rubbing his eyes, as if trying to fake his distress. Witnesses reported that Alana's family quickly became friends with Aaron after moving into their neighborhood in May 2010. Though he was known to have behavioral issues and a rebellious streak, no one perceived him as dangerous until a specific incident occurred. He was generally friendly and calm, which made it easy for Alana and her family to connect with him. They spoke often, and Aaron began visiting their home nearly every day. Amanda noticed Aaron acting strangely after Alana died. She thought it was unreasonable for him to worry about his fingerprints on Alana's body. A psychiatrist from the sheriff's office interviewed Aaron and reviewed the case details, concluding that his concern about fingerprints indicated guilt, leading the psychiatrist to believe he had a role in the crime. After questioning Amanda, detectives spoke with Aaron. Aaron, a 14-year-old high school student, lived with his older half-sister in Harlem, Georgia, right next to Alana's family. Aaron claimed that he returned home from school an hour early on the day of the murder and, despite the bad weather, went straight home instead of waiting at the bus stop for his friends. Knowing Alana would be home soon, he walked to her house. As he approached, he noticed a man in black jump inside, heard a loud bang, and saw a person dragging a girl into the nearby woods. Aaron chased after them, hoping to help Alana, but arrived too late. Afterward, he was so shaken that he vomited. When Amanda returned home, Aaron ran inside to explain what had happened and to call for assistance. However, Amanda and others questioned Aaron's account. Alana had no known enemies fitting his description, and the details of the alleged attacker were vague. Aaron described the person as a white male in his 30s, but couldn't provide any identifying features and thought he might be a burglar. Remarkably, several valuable electronics were missing from Alana's home, but there were no signs of forced entry. The family wasn't sure if the items were taken on the day of the murder. They believed they might have gone missing earlier. Aaron claimed he had seen the car used by the attacker. He said that when he ran toward Alana, the killer fled in a white pickup truck parked off a forest path. Even with suspicions growing, detectives didn't rush to conclusions due to Aaron's young age of 14. They initially attributed the inconsistencies in his story to the stress he was under. However, as the questioning continued, his narrative became increasingly muddled. Detectives grew more suspicious when they discovered that Aaron and Alana had briefly dated. Adults believed that he fell in love when Aaron first met her family, but their romantic involvement lasted only a few days. After a church service, where the pastor advised Alana that she was too young for a relationship, she told Aaron she wanted to end things due to the pastor's influence and her age. A few months later, Alana was dead, which raised concerns about Aaron's motives. Search teams with tracking dogs scoured the area around the crime scene, but found no evidence that matched Aaron's description. There were no tire tracks from the white pickup truck he mentioned. The dogs repeatedly returned to the body and then headed toward her home, suggesting that the only people present at the crime scene were Aaron, Amanda, and Alana. A forensic examination determined that Alana was shot with a .22 caliber pistol, the same type that was in her home. Alana's parents own a handgun and a pistol in the bedroom, but have forbidden other family members from entering the room or using any type of gun. The pistol was found in its usual location in the bedroom and sent for ballistics testing, which revealed that Alana had indeed been shot with a different gun. Further testing confirmed suspicions when gunpowder residue was found on Aaron's hands. He claimed that just days before the incident, he and Alana's family had set up an impromptu shooting range and had used Alana's parents' pistol. However, the family rejected this story, as they never permitted teenagers to engage in such dangerous activities. Nonetheless, Aaron's statement gave investigators useful information. It showed that he was aware of the firearms in Alana's house and suggested he might be trying to cover up his involvement with a lie. Additionally, the gunpowder residue was too fresh to have come from an event several days prior, indicating that Aaron would have had to wash his hands multiple times to remove it. When detectives confronted Aaron about their suspicions, it denied shooting Alana. Despite sticking to his story, it began to sound increasingly implausible. Now, he claimed that upon seeing a stranger get into a pickup truck, he ran toward it to see the license plate, but instead stumbled upon a gun a few meters from Alana's body. He said he took the gun and tossed it into the bushes in the forest. Interestingly, the gun was discovered exactly where Aaron indicated. His account included details not previously released to the public, leading detectives to suspect he was trying to adjust his lies to fit the facts that had emerged during the investigation. Further ballistics analysis confirmed that the bullet that killed Alana was fired from the gun found in the forest, which contained only Aaron's fingerprints and no other evidence. Suddenly, he remembered that the real killer must have worn gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints. As the interrogation progressed, it was evident that Aaron was becoming increasingly anxious, and police confidence grew that they would soon break him. After several hours, even Aaron realized he couldn't outsmart the detectives, no matter how much he altered his story to match new evidence. Eventually, he expressed a wish to confess. Aaron claimed that the shooting was an accident. He said that when Amanda left to pick up Chase, he went to visit Alana, knowing she was afraid of guns. He attempted to play a prank. He entered the house quietly through the unlocked door, removed his shoes, and approached without her noticing. He picked up the gun but did not realize it was loaded. Sneaking up behind her, he pointed the gun at the back of her head and accidentally pulled the trigger. When asked where he got the gun, he could not answer. Panicking, he planned to stage an attack by an unknown assailant and dragged Alana's body, which still showed signs of life, into the woods. By the time he left her on the ground, Amanda had returned home. Hearing Amanda's car, Aaron felt frightened, but he decided to continue with his charade. By the time of his confession, he had undergone over 4 hours of questioning and provided detectives with 27 different versions of events surrounding Alana's murder, none of which matched the evidence collected during the investigation. Consequently, Aaron Schmidt, who was 14 years old, was charged with the murder of 14-year-old Alana and faced additional charges. He was arrested and spent the next 2 years in a juvenile detention center. A background check revealed that Aaron had no criminal record and had never been involved in any illegal activities prior to this incident. He did not attend Harlem School. Instead, he was enrolled at Grovetown, a school for children and adolescents with behavioral issues. His friends and family had not observed any violent behavior in him. When detectives interviewed the principal of his school, he confirmed that Aaron struggled with learning, which is why he transferred to a different institution. However, he did not provide details about the specific difficulties Aaron faced. Investigators believe that Aaron, unable to handle rejection from Alana, a girl he had a crush on, attacked her after she refused to date him. They also considered the possibility of an attempted kidnapping, but Alana resisted, leading to her being shot during a struggle. Alana's family observed that Aaron's behavior became more and more suspicious after Alana rejected his advances. About a week before the murder, Aaron entered their home while the family was away. Alana discovered him inside when she returned from school, and she was both surprised and alarmed to find the front door unlocked. Alana's mother follows her home and suspects Aaron of breaking in. When she inquired about how he got inside, he claimed the door was simply unlocked. The family doubted his statement, as they always locked their door when leaving. Subsequently, Alana's mother had a serious conversation with Aaron, informing him that he could not visit unless one of her parents was home and that he was not allowed over before 5 p.m. Alana's parents also stressed that the entire family knew that their father kept a shotgun and a handgun in his bedroom. The others were not allowed to enter the room or touch the weapons. They also never talked about it with outsiders, not even Aaron. The fact that Aaron was aware of the firearms heightened the family's fears. This knowledge suggested that he had previously been in the house alone and had carefully examined the location of their belongings. During a search of Aaron's home, police discovered a gun case identical to the one containing the firearm found in the woods. Along with ammunition and an owner's manual, this evidence indicated that he had purchased the gun himself. Yet he insisted he acquired it only after the crime, out of fear that the unknown individual would come after him for being a witness. It was clear that a 14-year-old could not have purchased a firearm in the short time between the crime and his arrest. Ballistics confirmed that this gun was indeed the one used to kill Alana, reinforcing suspicions that he had premeditated the crime. Furthermore, police found various items belonging to Alana's family in Aaron's bedroom, including expensive electronics and an iPod. In his family's pickup truck, they found a duplicate key to Alana's house hidden under the floor mat, which had been made without her family's permission. Alana's family was shocked to discover how dangerous Aaron had become, especially since they had trusted him. He had manipulated the situation, keeping the key to their home a secret, which allowed him free access to their lives. Following the charges of first-degree murder, Aaron also faced charges of theft and unlawful possession of a firearm used in the crime. There were suspicions that he had stolen the gun rather than purchased it legally. Aaron denied all charges against him. Given the severity of the crime, prosecutors sought to try him as an adult, while his attorney argued for the case to be handled in the juvenile justice system, considering his age at the time of the murder. Ultimately, based on state laws, the judge ruled that Aaron would be tried as an adult due to the gravity of the offense. In 2012, when the accused, Aaron, turned 15, the hearings commenced. His attorney had consistently sought to have the case moved to the juvenile justice system, but was not successful. Prosecutors argued that the attack stemmed from Alana's refusal to date Aaron. He maintained that the crime was premeditated, and that Aaron had gone to great lengths to conceal his actions, even exploiting Alana's family's trust to steal their valuables. Evidence indicated that Aaron had planned the crime and had attempted to mislead investigators and those close to Alana. Detectives noted that he displayed no emotion during interrogations or at the crime scene. He attempted to cry when suspicions were first directed at him, but it was unconvincing, making him appear even more suspicious. Amanda and Chase tried to assist Alana before the paramedics arrived, while they observed Aaron standing calmly nearby. Detached from the situation, the defense attorney attempted to present Aaron as a victim, claiming he came from a dysfunctional family that subjected him to cruelty and aggression from a young age. He argued that Alana's rejection caused emotional damage to Aaron. However, there was no evidence to support claims of past violence against him, which seemed like a desperate effort to elicit sympathy from the jury. In contrast, the prosecution was assertive and relied on concrete evidence. The prosecutor introduced a substantial amount of evidence, including a gun found in the woods near Alana's body. Ballistics confirmed that she had been shot with this gun, and Aaron's fingerprints were found on the handle, with no other traces. Testimonies from dog handlers indicated that no traces of strangers were found in the house, nor any sense of other individuals at the crime scene. Witnesses from Alana's family, including Amanda and Chase, who had previously met Aaron, testified about his suspicious behavior, noting their confusion and horror. Despite this, Aaron maintained his innocence. The defense even attempted to suggest that there was another attacker who fatally harmed Alana but was thwarted by Aaron, escaping without a trace. However, this claim seemed implausible. Aaron's accounts changed frequently during questioning. At one point, he admitted to using a gun and accidentally firing it. But the investigation disproved this, as it required significant force to operate the trigger effectively. Given his physical description, it was deemed unlikely that he could have fired it accidentally. Ultimately, none of the 27 different accounts given by him were credible. The prosecutor suggested that the motive for the crime stemmed from Aaron's anger over Alana's rejection. He had hoped to pursue a romantic relationship with her, but her refusal drove him to seek revenge. Stole a gun, made a copy of a key to the house, and waited for the perfect moment to strike. That day turned tragic for Alana. Noticing she was home alone, he took the opportunity to attack. After shooting her, he heard Amanda arriving and attempted to conceal the body in the woods. But he failed to hide his actions effectively and became increasingly agitated as he tried to evade capture. By the end of February 2012, the jury had listened to arguments from both parties and began their deliberation on the verdict. On March 9, 2012, Aaron Schmidt was found guilty of first-degree murder, possession of a firearm used in the murder, and theft. He received a life sentence without the possibility of parole for the murder. Additionally, he was sentenced to 5 years for possession, to be served consecutively, and another 10 years for theft, which would be served concurrently with the life sentence. This outcome brought relief to Alana's family, who had consistently warned journalists to be cautious and not to trust individuals, even if they were minors. After a Supreme Court ruling, Aaron's sentence was enforced in 2015 when he was transferred to the state prison in Hayes. Since then, he has made multiple attempts to appeal the verdict. His lawyer tried to have the case reviewed under juvenile justice laws to reduce the sentence significantly, but these efforts have not been successful. As a result, he is still in prison. Not all families are harmonious. Some hide deep conflict, so deep that one day, hatred erupts into bloody tragedy. In today's story, Maria del Carmen Hilares was brutally murdered by her own daughter, Juliana Llamoja. 65 stab wounds tore the mother's body apart, her face disfigured beyond recognition. A horrific scene that made even seasoned police officers shudder. But what's more shocking, Juliana didn't serve a life sentence, nor décadas behind bars. In just a few years, the girl walked free, even appearing on television, smiling at the camera. How could such a terrible crime end like that? And what secrets lie behind Peru's most controversial sentence? To uncover why a daughter could turn against her own mother, we must go back to where it all began. A family that looked perfect from the outside, but was slowly being torn apart from within. Maria del Carmen Hilares married Luis Llamoja Flores, a well-respected and highly paid judge. Maria works as a secretary at the military prosecutor's office, helping her family live a comfortable life. Their relationship developed quickly, and they decided to get married, later having 3 children, a daughter named Juliana and 2 sons. Juliana was her father's favorite. She was spoiled and always sought to please him. For nearly 20 years, the family enjoyed a seemingly perfect life in San Juan de Miraflores, Lima, Peru. Her father, Luis, was very proud of his daughter's creativity and love of art. By age 13, she was writing poetry and winning competitions, continuing her success as she pursued a law degree at the University of the Sacred Heart, aspiring to become a judge like her father. In contrast, Juliana's younger brothers were closer to their mother, Maria, which created tension in the household. especially between her and her mother. As Juliana matured, their relationship soured, with frequent arguments over everything from her clothing choices to her social circle. Maria suspected that Juliana had stolen her money and jewelry. Juliana's younger brother, Luis Jamoja Hilares, supported the accusation, as he was well aware of her misdeeds, which included stealing a classmate's bank card. Maria felt angry with her husband, Luis, for spoiling Juliana, making her dependent and not respecting basic rules. On the contrary, Juliana often belittled her mother by reminding her of her lack of higher education and professional status. Although Maria sought support from Luis, he consistently sided with their daughter, which created a tense atmosphere. Neighbors noticed the tense atmosphere between mother and daughter due to the constant quarrels, and they saw that Juliana changed when interacting with others, becoming happier. This dynamic was exacerbated by Luis's neglect of Maria, as he prioritized his relationship with Juliana, often treating her like a romantic partner. During family outings, Luis would take Juliana in the front seat while Maria was relegated to the back, reinforcing the emotional distance between them. As a result, Maria grew closer to her sons, who struggled to comprehend Juliana's behavior, which seemed aimed at provoking their mother. On Saturday, March 26, 2005, a troubling situation arose in their family home. Luis was away from home for a few days because he was on a business trip to Argentina with his youngest son. This left Maria, Juliana, and her younger brother Hilares at home. During the first days of their father's absence, Juliana stole jewelry from her mother's closet and spent the night out. When she returned, she was wearing her mother's jewelry, which angered her mother, but the yelling had little effect on her. Later that evening, Juliana ran away to be with friends and returned home drunk after midnight, banging on the door and claiming she had lost her keys. Hilares, awakened by her noise, suspected she was trying to annoy their mother on purpose. Juliana ignored her mother's rules, insisting she was 18 and could do what she pleased. The following morning, she acted as if nothing was wrong. When she asked for pocket money, her mother Maria gave it to her without hesitation. Shortly after, Maria received a call from her husband and reported that things were going well. Maria seemed unfazed by the ongoing family drama and didn't recognize the unusual behavior from Juliana. She believed her daughter was attending school and taking money for transportation and lunch. However, Hilares knew she didn't have classes that day. When he pointed this out, Maria realized Juliana had tricked her again for cash, which frustrated her. On March 28, 2005, Hilares and Maria woke up early. Hilares had just graduated high school and was preparing for university, so they decided to go shopping for supplies. At the store, Maria discovered her bank card was missing from her bag. Assuming she left it at home, she arranged to pick up their items the next day. As they leave the supermarket, Maria warns Hilares that if Juliana steals the card, she will suffer the consequences. Around 2:30 p.m., Hilares asked for permission to go skateboarding with friends and left, hugging his mother goodbye, unaware it would be their last goodbye. When he returned later that evening, he found only Juliana at home. She seemed nervous, and Hilares noticed she was drinking a large glass of soda. Despite her recent focus on healthy eating, Hilares changed his clothes and left again, thinking that his mother, Maria, might be out shopping. When he returned around 11 o'clock p.m., he found the front door locked. This struck him as odd. After knocking for over 5 minutes, Juliana finally let him in, wrapped in a towel as if she had just showered. When Hilares asked her what was going on, she ignored him and left the room. Hilares went into the kitchen to look for his mother but couldn't find her. After searching the rooms and calling his mother but no one answered, he went to the guest bathroom and found the door locked. The light was off, and knocking received no answer. Concerned, he looked through a small viewing window and was horrified to see what appeared to be a body on the floor. Panicking, he called for Juliana and asked who was inside the bathroom. She feigned surprise and claimed not to know who was there. Unable to open the door himself, Hilares called a neighbor and the police. Together, they forced the door open to find Maria lying face down in a pool of blood, with broken glasses and a knife handle nearby. The scene resembled a brutal murder. Maria bled to death without any assistance. Despite the distressing circumstances, Juliana remained composed and said nothing. Hilares realized that she was the last person who saw their mother alive. During questioning, Juliana calmly recounted that after returning home from a walk, she and her mother argued again. Overwhelmed, Maria grabbed a knife and pointed it at Juliana's own neck. In response, Juliana picked up another kitchen knife, leading to a struggle during which her mother was killed. A forensic examination revealed that Maria had suffered 65 stab wounds, mostly shallow, with the fatal injury to her neck severing an artery. She bled to death within minutes, and no one attempted to help her. Juliana claimed the injury was self-inflicted during the fight, calling it an accident, but her story raised suspicions from the start. Maria had numerous injuries to her arms, shoulders, chest, back, and head, with her face requiring 300 stitches before burial. In contrast, Juliana only had minor scratches and a few bruises, casting doubt on her claim of self-defense and suggesting that she might have been the aggressor. The next day, when police re-interviewed Juliana, she changed her statement, admitting to striking first, but still framing it as self-defense. The conflict began when Maria returned home to find Juliana playing loud music while trying on new clothes. An argument ensued in which Maria yelled at Juliana, even throwing a vase at her. Juliana responded by shouting back, and during the altercation, Maria accused her daughter of trying to poison her. Juliana explained that she had discovered some packages in the kitchen, mistakenly believing they contained harmless substances, not rat poison. When Hilares returned home, he found Juliana mixing soda with the poison. She claimed it was just an experiment. After Hilares left, she realized the mixture did not react and disposed of it. However, Maria, seeing the white powder bags, accused Juliana of planning to kill her, escalating the argument further. In anger, Juliana went to the kitchen for a watermelon and grabbed a knife. As Maria continued to scream at her, Juliana stabbed the knife into the table and demanded her mother be quiet. But the insults persisted. Juliana swung the knife to scare her mother, who then grabbed another knife, unwilling to back down. They struggled, and in the chaos, they collided with the wall, accidentally turning off the lights, while loud music continued to play, masking their commotion from neighbors. When the fight ended and Juliana regained her composure, she turned on the light and found her mother lying on the floor, severely injured with a knife in her neck. Juliana insisted it was not her fault, claiming her mother inflicted the fatal wound on herself. Instead of calling the police, she dragged her mother's body to the guest bathroom and cleaned the kitchen. Following Juliana's confession, authorities decided to conduct psychiatric evaluations for both her and Maria, suspecting that Maria might have provoked the incident or caused her own death. This decision had a significant impact. Journalists wrote sensational articles claiming that Maria had gone insane and attacked her daughter, Juliana. This infuriated Hilares, who argued desperately that his mother had never suffered from mental illness. He attempted to refute Juliana's claim that their mother had inflicted the fatal wound on herself, but he didn't believe her. Meanwhile, Juliana eagerly embraced media speculation, insisting in interviews that their mother was unwell and accusing her younger brother of having been troubled for years because of it. Hilares accused Juliana of lying and trying to shift blame onto their deceased mother, who could no longer defend herself. In interviews, Hilares maintained that Juliana was the one who initiated conflict and attacked their mother. The forensic expert's report only intensified the situation, stating he could not determine with certainty who had delivered the lethal stab to the neck. This has led Juliana to adjust her testimony, stating that their mother chose to harm herself. Hilares confronted Juliana, pointing out that their mother had been stabbed 65 times, which he argued could not be considered an act of self-defense or self-harm. He had seen her mutilated body firsthand. It looked as though it had been ravaged by wild animals. The fact that Juliana did not try to help their mother or call the police after her death, but instead dragged her body into the bathroom and waited for Hilares to arrive, raised suspicions about the nature of the incident. Hilares was further enraged by the support Juliana received from a large portion of the family, particularly on their father's side. He was disheartened that his relatives united to support Juliana. Instead of seeking justice for their mother, she received strong support from her father and even her youngest brother, both of whom believed she had acted in self-defense. Hilares claimed his father had a history of excusing Juliana's behavior. Surprisingly, Juliana's actions garnered increasing support, including from neighbors who claimed that Maria often behaved erratically around her daughter. After psychiatric evaluations, experts concluded that Juliana was sane and aware of her actions, making her fit for trial. However, some concerning traits were also identified. Juliana displayed an unhealthy attachment to her father, Luis, known as the Electra complex, which led to rivalry with her mother. Further assessments revealed that she had a hysterical personality, prone to exaggerating emotions and seeking excessive attention through her behavior and appearance. The incident has sparked a lot of controversy and speculation on social media about the true relationship between Juliana and her father, Luis. Some have even suggested that the two were romantically involved. During a search of the family home, investigators found a knife handle but no blade. The blade was never discovered, and it remains unclear what Juliana did with it. An intact knife was found lodged in Maria's neck, yet no fingerprints were found on it. Evidence suggested that Juliana tried to conceal what she had done by hiding the knife handle, stabbing Maria multiple times, and possessing rat poison. Despite this, she continued to claim self-defense, which seemed unconvincing. Juliana's trial began on March 8, 2006. She asserted that her intent was self-defense and that she never planned to kill her mother. As the trial progressed, her story became increasingly inconsistent, especially regarding the rat poison. Initially, she claimed to have only been experimenting with the substance she found in the kitchen, but later denied any involvement with the poison at all, contradicting the discovery of several packets in her room. Juliana's lawyer argued that her actions were a result of years of emotional stress stemming from the troubled relationship with her mother, Maria. Juliana claimed she had endured constant insults and impulsive behavior from her mother. She recounted several distressing incidents, such as her mother throwing a container of beans at her, hitting her with a broom, and reading her diary without permission, all of which made her feel violated. During the hearing, she became very emotional and cried. While the defense team attempted to minimize the seriousness of the situation, an important testimony during the trial came from the forensic expert who performed Maria's autopsy. He noted that out of the 60 stab wounds, only the one to the neck was fatal, while others caused significant bleeding but were not life-threatening. The report suggested that Juliana might have delivered superficial, defensive blows while trying to protect herself. It was also highlighted that Maria's face required 300 stitches for burial. However, this detail was not emphasized during the trial. A defense expert testified convincingly that Juliana had no intent to kill. The incident was a spontaneous act born from a struggle for survival, where both were acting largely on instinct, unable to think rationally. On the other hand, the prosecution argued that the evidence and the nature of the injuries did not align with self-defense, presenting a case for a brutal murder. Ultimately, on July 26, 2006, Juliana Yamoja was found guilty and sentenced to 20 years in prison, along with an approximately $8,000 fine. She disagreed with the verdict and appealed. In May 2007, her sentence was reduced to 12 years, attributed to her expressed remorse and her young age. Many followers of the case in the media questioned whether her father, Luis Yamoja Flores, a respected judge, had any influence on the lenient sentence. These suspicions intensified when Juliana was released on parole in May 2009, just 4 years into her sentence. The public reacted with outrage, and her family faced backlash. But she remained unfazed by the criticism. She assured journalists that she would adhere to all conditions set by the judge, which included notifying the court of any changes in her address, a prohibition on leaving the country, and regular updates on her activities. Complying with these conditions was not difficult for her. She quickly found a job with her uncle's company. In 2010, Juliana published a poetry collection and started a related blog. Many noted that she showed no remorse for her mother's death. Following her release, she appeared on various media programs, giving interviews without expressing grief, much to the irritation of those who viewed her as a criminal, including her younger brother, Hilaris. Despite portraying herself as a victim on television, Juliana began violating her parole rules. In late 2011, Hilaris reported that she had left the country after she discovered travel photos on her social media. He mentioned in interviews that he was not pursuing her, but believed she was responsible for their mother's murder and wanted to ensure she faced consequences. At this point, Hilaris had distanced himself from his family and faced backlash for reporting Juliana. He expressed in an interview that he couldn't pretend nothing had happened and felt isolated because he was the only one still mourning their mother and seeking justice for her. After contacting law enforcement, an investigation revealed that Juliana had committed several violations of her early release conditions. She missed mandatory therapy sessions, ignored curfews, failed to work for her uncle's company, and forged her lawyer's signatures to travel to Ecuador. Juliana tried to defend herself, claiming the signatures were not hers. Due to her continued violations, law enforcement took notice again. An arrest warrant was issued in January 2012, and due to her cumulative violations, she faced at least 8 more years in prison. When police attempted to arrest her, she was missing, leading to speculation that she had escaped. Weeks went by with no sign of her. During this time, her lawyer filed an appeal, arguing that the claims of multiple violations were unfounded and that the arrest was unlawful. Juliana's arrest warrant was dropped in March 2012, and soon after, she returned home as though nothing had happened. Her younger brother, Hilaris, was very upset by this outcome. He was aware that the judge who lifted the arrest warrant was a close friend of their father. At this time, Juliana only maintained a good relationship with her youngest brother. She completed the remainder of her sentence in freedom. Hilaris earned a degree in communications, speaks 3 languages, and has traveled to over 80 countries as a public relations specialist for government agencies. While he has partially reconnected with his family, their dynamics have changed permanently. He still regards his sister, Juliana, as a murderer. Juliana Yamoja obtained a law degree, but was unable to practice as a lawyer. Her legal journey ended in Europe. Around 2:00 a.m., in Ipacaraí, the silence of the night was shattered. Some neighbors, still awake, heard it, a young woman crying, screaming, begging for her life. Then suddenly, nothing. Silence. Doors stayed locked. Lights stayed off. No one stepped outside. No one called the police. Fear swallowed the entire street. What happened that night? And why did it take more than a year before the truth finally came to light? This isn't just a mystery. It's the story of a girl who asked for help and never received it. This is the case of Maliza Fleitas. Stay with us until the very end, because this story is not only about what happened to Maliza, it's about the silence of an entire neighborhood, the failure of a justice system, and a fugitive who turned her desperate cries into nothing more than an echo in the darkness. Maliza Fleitas was born on June 9, 1999, in Paraguay. She grew up with limited means. After her parents divorced, she lived with her father, Luis Henrique Fleitas, a street vendor and window cleaner. in a modest neighborhood, despite difficult économiques conditions. She still grew up in love and has many special memories with her father. From a young age, she adored animals. In her free time, she and her father attended rock and heavy metal concerts, and that music became central to her identity. Over time, her style reflected the scene she loved, a darker aesthetic, multiple tattoos and piercings, and a growing independence visible on her social media. She eventually worked at a tattoo and piercing studio. Friends describe her as outgoing and energetic, charming and charismatic. However, everything changed in April 2017 when Meliza, then 17, started dating Jaime Vera Fernandez, 32. Many said Jaime knew her father, was part of the same group of friends, often went to concerts and attended parties at home. Jaime was born in Paraguay in 1985. He moved to the United States in the 1992nd with his parents and 2 siblings. His family was well regarded. Neighbors even gathered to say goodbye when they left. But his life abroad was troubled. As a teenager, he struggled with behavior issues and substance abuse, and was often seen intoxicated. He also developed a fascination with the occult and darker music themes, especially metal. At 22, Jaime became the father of a daughter, Sofia. Although his relationship with Sofia's mother ended, he stayed in contact for his daughter's sake. In 2007, Jaime got into serious legal trouble in the United States, according to various reports. One version claims he assaulted someone in the New York City subway, leaving the victim critically injured. Another says he was involved in a gang-related fight and fled to avoid prosecution or retaliation. Whatever the case, he returned to Paraguay and kept a low profile. Jaime rarely left home except for concerts or essentials. Neighbors often saw him on Sundays eating lunch alone at his grandfather's grave. An unsolved ritual. His appearance drew attention. Long, straight hair, mostly black leather clothing, extensive tattoos, and long sleeves, even in Paraguay's intense heat. He always wore a pentagram necklace. He also owned many weapons, knives, swords, and firearms. Combined with his isolation, these details made neighbors uneasy. Jaime lived on the upper floor of his family's 2-story house. The ground floor was rented out, giving him rental income. He also received dollar remittances from relatives in the US, so he didn't need a formal job. At 30, he began dating a woman slightly older than him. Life felt steadier then. He enrolled in culinary school, pursued his passion for cooking, and moved in with her and her children. But the calm didn't last. The relationship fell apart, and by early 2017 they had separated for good. After the breakup, things worsened. Jaime reportedly fired guns from his home's windows, alarming neighbors. Though no police investigation followed, he became more socially active, hosting more visitors, and rumors spread that he was using multiple banned substances. During this chaotic period, he and Meliza began appearing together in public, at concerts and local events, clearly as a couple. Their relationship quickly drew concern. The 15-year age gap made many uneasy, but Jaime's erratic behavior was the bigger issue. Meliza's father, Luis, strongly disapproved, both because of Jaime's age and his disturbing conduct. Despite this, Meliza moved in with Jaime. From then on, little was known about her daily life. Neighbors saw her rarely leave the house. She often slept until afternoon and appeared to have dropped out of high school. The cheerful, lively young woman her friends knew seemed to be fading behind closed doors. Over the following months, friends noticed emotional and physical changes. Meliza gained weight, altered her hair color and style, and became more withdrawn. Jaime's behavior grew more troubling. He taught Meliza to use a firearm, something that might have seemed thrilling at first but soon felt like a warning about the danger around her. At one gathering at their home, friends came to listen to music. The evening soured when Jaime, consumed by jealousy, publicly berated Meliza. The argument escalated, and she stormed out that night. That moment marked a turning point. Her friends were worried when they couldn't reach her, but she appeared the next day acting as if nothing had happened. Still, concerns mounted. At another event, Melissa, Jaime, and Luis attended a rock concert together. The night turned tense when Jaime, reportedly drunk, confronted Melissa in a jealous rage. The situation escalated until police intervened. Friends felt unsettled, and they had noticed other red flags. Signs Melissa refused to discuss. Bruises and marks appeared on her face and body. When asked, she stayed silent. Her friends respected her privacy, but feared the worst. Then came the night of July 20, 2017. Melissa and her friends went to a music event at a local hostel. At first, it looked like a normal night, but her friends soon noticed her unease. She was anxious, guarded, and spoke carefully, as if worried about being overheard. In a brief moment when Jaime wasn't watching, she confided in them. She said she had learned disturbing things about him that made her feel unsafe. He was violent and unpredictable, had cut his own arms, and kept a large cache of weapons in his home. Alarmed, her friends urged her to leave and promised to help. That night, Melissa decided to end the relationship. She left the event with Jaime, saying she needed to speak with him privately and make her intentions clear. It was the last time anyone saw her alive. The next day, her friends tried to contact her. She never responded. At first, Melissa's friends thought she had simply changed her mind and decided to stay with Jaime. But by the fourth day, worry turned into fear. Jaime was spotted at another concert at the same hostel, this time without Melissa. Melissa's friends began to panic. A few days later, they saw him alone again at a local bar. Something felt wrong. One of Melissa's friends called him. When asked about Melissa, Jaime calmly said everything was fine and that they were at home together. But as more days passed without any sign of her, his answer felt less believable. Her friends began searching on their own. They went to Jaime's parents' house, hoping to find Melissa or get information, but no one was there. Desperate, they tried to file a missing person report. Police refused to take it because they weren't family members. Even so, the friends didn't give up. Convinced something terrible had happened, and suspecting Jaime, they turned to social media to spread the word. Eventually, they reached Melissa's father, Luis, who lived in another city, and told him everything. By then, 2 weeks had already passed without any contact from her. On August 10, 2017, exactly 15 days after Melissa was last seen, her father officially reported her missing, but Jaime had also vanished. A local prosecutor took the case, yet the investigation was mishandled from the start. The assigned official showed little interest. Authorities conducted a sloppy search of Jaime's house. His belongings were still there, untouched. No useful leads surfaced. Neighbors weren't interviewed. Evidence wasn't collected or preserved. By any standard, the search was negligent. With no real investigative effort, the case was quietly set aside. Officials claimed Melissa had probably left willingly with Jaime. Her friends and family knew that wasn't true. As months went by, feminist organizations in Paraguay rallied around the case, holding protests and campaigns demanding answers. The justice system's silence became impossible to ignore. As the first anniversary approached, there was still no progress. Melissa's friends and family became the driving force behind the search. They even began to consider that she might have been trafficked. Public pressure finally drew media attention. On July 24, 2018, a prominent journalist aired a major investigation. The report exposed the authorities' inaction and brought forward new witness testimonies from neighbors who had stayed silent. Multiple people said that around 2 a.m. on July 21, 2017, the night Melissa disappeared, desperate screams came from Jaime's house. She was begging for her life. But instead of calling the police, Neighbors locked their doors. Too afraid to intervene, Jaime had a reputation for violent outbursts. He had fired guns from his window more than once, and no one wanted to become his next target. One neighbor later said they saw Jaime days afterward, walking around as if nothing had happened. One especially chilling account came from a tenant of Jaime's, a woman who sold plastic goods. The night of the screams, Jaime called her unexpectedly. He said he was leaving for Argentina due to health issues and told her to pay rent to his uncle. Almost as an afterthought, he added that if Melaisa's father came looking for him, she should say he had already left. This detail remained hidden for nearly a year until the journalist revealed it. Public outrage and media pressure finally forced action. Authorities ordered a new, more thorough search of Jaime's house. They found firearms and money transfer receipts from the United States. But beyond that, nothing meaningful happened. The investigation stalled yet again, and no solid leads followed. 3 months later, something unexpected happened. Something that would break the case open. On October 13, 2018, construction workers doing routine jobs at a neighbor's home noticed disturbed soil in Jaime's backyard. It looked like someone had dug a large rectangular pit and covered it. At first, they weren't sure it meant anything. But when they dug a bit deeper, they found something alarming. Dozens of bullets buried more than 40 centimeters underground. They reported it to their foreman, and word spread quickly. Neighbors started connecting the dots. Melaisa's disappearance, Jaime's suspicious behavior, and now this discovery. Concerned neighbors called the police, but authorities dismissed the tip and refused to respond. A close friend of Melaisa's, active in a local feminist collective, tried again. This time, the police said that no forensic team would be available until Monday, October 15. Outraged, the collective went to the media. The pressure worked. 3 days later, after protests by feminist groups in Paraguay, national police finally searched the property. What they found went far beyond bullets. In the same area of the yard, they uncovered a decomposed female body. Nearby were clothing items, a black leather jacket and a pair of boots. The skull showed visible trauma, especially to the jaw, initially thought to be from blunt force. The prosecutor revealed something disturbing. During a previous search, officers had passed over this exact spot and found nothing. This raised serious questions. Had the body been there all along? Or was it moved later? While dental records would take time to confirm, Melaisa's father and friends immediately recognized the clothing. The jacket had been a gift and one of her favorites. There was no doubt. Melaisa's body was taken to the judicial morgue. Investigators returned to Jaime's home for a fourth search. Inside, the press described the scene as an apartment of horror. Every room contained disturbing images and black metal references. Mythological figures and violent imagery covered the walls. Luminol tests in the main bedroom lit up with blood traces on the walls, sheets, and pillows. It was no longer just suspicion. The room had been a murder scene. A theory emerged. Melaisa may have been lying face up on the bed when she was killed. Her body, wrapped in a comforter, might have been dragged through the kitchen and thrown from the balcony into the yard where she was found. More clues supported this. A bullet hole was found in the mattress. A shell casing was embedded deep in the wooden bed frame. The angle and trajectory matched an entry wound at Melaisa's temple and an exit through her chin. The autopsy confirmed a close-range gunshot to the head. There was no gunpowder on her skin, indicating the gun was fired near Comas, but not pressed against her head. Despite the fatal shot, the mattress had little blood. The pillows, however, were soaked, suggesting that Jaime may have fired through them to muffle the sound. Investigators also saw unusual marks on the bedroom walls, as if something large had been attached or recently removed. Whatever it was might have played a role in the crime. Meanwhile, Melaisa's friends and feminist groups came together to raise money for her funeral. They sold food in the streets, stood in the cold for hours, and even endured robberies during their efforts. Initially, Meliza was buried without a headstone. Later, her loved ones placed a memorial plaque. Her friends, along with women's groups, publicly denounced the prosecutor's failures. Her father, Luis, expressed his anger. The police hadn't found his daughter. He had. She was discovered only because of a coincidence, a construction project, and a shallow grave. After this, the prosecutors on the case were formally disciplined, and the investigation was reassigned. The case stopped being treated as a disappearance and was officially classified as a femicide. An international arrest warrant was issued for Jaime Vera Fernandez, but he had already vanished. Authorities believe he fled the country soon after Meliza's death. He has family in the United States, Brazil, France, and possibly Argentina, making him harder to track. Records indicate that after leaving Paraguay, he passed through Punta del Este and then traveled to São Paulo, Brazil, where he flew to Colombia. The last activity linked to him was a cash withdrawal in Mexico. Investigators suspect he may be living under a different identity in the United States. A neighbor reported seeing two men, one of them Jaime, dragging Meliza on the night she died. The backyard where she was buried was visible from the street, making it unlikely anyone could dig a grave unnoticed without help. Multiple witnesses said people visited Jaime that weekend. Despite this, no DNA tests were conducted at the scene, and no effort was made to determine whether someone else had been in the apartment or helped cover up the crime. To this day, he remains a fugitive. As of August 2025, Meliza's friends and family continue their fight. They speak to the media, organize public campaigns, and demand justice. They urge anyone who has seen Jaime or knows his whereabouts to come forward. It is likely he left Paraguay by land, crossing into Brazil on August 11, 2017, before continuing to Colombia. After that, the trail went cold. He could be anywhere. The search continues. On a quiet May night in 1981, an 11-year-old boy awoke to find a tall, masked intruder tying him up. Minutes later, he witnessed a scene no child should ever have to face. His mother, Christine, shot to death, lying in a pool of blood and tied to her bed. The investigation quickly pointed to Lori Bambi Bembenek, a 22-year-old former police officer, as the culprit. But as the case unfolds, questions begin to arise. Was Lori really a cold-blooded killer? Or was she simply a scapegoat in a corrupt and sexist system? Lori Bembenek was born on August 15, 1958, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She was the youngest of 3 daughters, growing up in a picturesque neighborhood she adored. Lori often draws inspiration from the beauty of her homeland to nurture her creativity. After finishing high school, she pursued her artistic interests by studying design and fashion at Bryant and Stratton College. Though the school was far from her family's home, her enthusiasm pushed her to relocate temporarily to Virginia. 2 years later, having earned her associate's degree, Lori returned to Milwaukee, eager to begin her career. During this time, Lori blossomed into a striking young woman. She always pays attention to her appearance, but is also very considerate of the people around her. Friends described her as kind, sensitive, and warm-hearted. For a while, she modeled for magazines and K&Rs, but her ambitions soon shifted. Lori's father, a former police officer, had left the force in frustration over widespread corruption. He had vowed never to return unless conditions improved, and in the meantime, he worked as a carpenter. Inspired by his principles and determined to show that integrity could still prevail, Lori decided to pursue a career in law enforcement herself. The police force, however, was an overwhelmingly male environment, and her father warned her of the difficulties ahead. At just 20 years old, Lori faced immense challenges. Women were rare in the department, and many male officers openly resented their presence. Even at the police academy, Lori encountered resistance. Fortunately, she wasn't alone. She befriended Judy Zess, another young woman recruit. They quickly bonded, supporting each other through the trials of training. Lori proved herself strong and athletic, often meeting or surpassing the physical standards required of men. Graduation posed no problem for her. In 1980, Lori joined the Milwaukee Police Department, but the hostility only deepened. Her male colleagues viewed her as a threat to their culture and resisted her presence at every turn. Rather than support, she received harassment and thinly veiled threats. Even minor mistakes were ridiculed, creating a toxic workplace environment. Judy also graduated and joined the force, strengthening their friendship as they faced similar struggles. They spent free time together, watching movies or attending parties, finding comfort in each other's understanding of the job's pressures. Lori met adversity with determination, while Judy sometimes turned to marijuana to cope. One day, Judy was caught smoking in Lori's presence. Though Lori did not participate, Judy was immediately arrested and dismissed from the force. Lori, too, came under suspicion, initially accused of being an accomplice. Toxicology tests cleared Lori of banned substance use, but investigators still searched for a way to implicate her. Eventually, Lori was accused of complicity simply for failing to report Judy's violation. From then on, the pressure intensified. Many in the department wanted Lori gone, scrutinizing her every move for grounds to fire her. By August 1980, she was dismissed from the force and effectively blacklisted, making it nearly impossible to find similar work. The official reason, complicity in a crime, felt to Lori like nothing more than a pretext. She believed her dismissal was rooted in prejudice and resentment, a deliberate attempt to push her out. Feeling betrayed, she saw herself as yet another casualty of the corruption and injustice her father had warned her about. That summer, the Milwaukee precinct regularly held parties where officers gathered outdoors or in public spaces to drink, often pushing well past the limits of decency. At one large picnic in the city park in 1980, alcohol flowed freely. As the revelry escalated, several officers stripped off their clothes, danced naked on tables, and indiscriminated intimacy with women. The event took place in public view, was witnessed by residents, and provocative photographs were taken. When Lori learned of the incident, she was outraged. She believed that such blatant misconduct warranted far harsher punishment than her friend Judy's private marijuana use. Her anger was understandable. She had lost her job for something beyond her control, while those engaging in public indecency faced no consequences. Determined to seek justice, Lori obtained copies of the photographs and confirmed that none of the officers involved had been disciplined. Furious at the double standard within the department, she submitted the photos to the police committee and filed a lawsuit, alleging discrimination. More than justice, Lori hoped these efforts might restore her position on the force, a job she had fought hard to earn. But her case stalled, and ultimately, no one was punished. At the time, Lori and Judy were struggling financially. Both unemployed, they shared a small apartment, barely able to cover rent. They blamed the Milwaukee Police Department for their situation, their savings rapidly vanishing. Desperate for income, Lori accepted an offer to work at the Playboy Club, a private venue catering to wealthy men about an hour outside Milwaukee. Though the job meant wearing revealing outfits and serving food and drinks, she saw it as a temporary solution to pay off debts. Judy, however, was not hired. Lori quickly discovered the financial rewards. Generous tips eased her money troubles, yet she disliked the atmosphere from the start. The lewd remarks, unwanted advances, and harassment from patrons wore her down. Matters turned darker when she found a dead rat placed on the hood of her car after a shift. Rats were unheard of at the upscale club, and Lori interpreted this as a threat, an intimidation tactic linked to her complaints against the police. Rather than frightening her into silence, The incident only strengthened her resolve to fight for women's rights, particularly within law enforcement. After a month at the club, Lori could no longer tolerate the environment and resigned. She had saved enough to settle her debts and extend her lease. Seeking stability, she found work as a trainer at a fitness club. Around this time, Lori met Alfred O. Fred Schultz, a police officer 10 years her senior who worked at the same station where she and Judy had once served. Fred had even attended the infamous naked party, though Lori was unaware of this when they met. In turn, I had no knowledge of her discrimination complaint and bore her no resentment. Then, Lori and Fred fell in love. She overlooked his flaws, including a reputation as a ladies' man, choosing instead to embrace the romance. Fred had recently divorced his first wife, Christine Schultz, who left him after uncovering his repeated infidelities. He had 2 young sons from that marriage. Charming and persuasive, Fred soon proposed to Lori, and she accepted. In January 1981, just 3 months after his divorce, they married in Illinois. However, Wisconsin law required a 6-month waiting period after divorce before remarriage, so their first marriage was annulled. They later remarried legally, after which Fred moved into the small apartment Lori shared with Judy and her boyfriend. Meanwhile, Christine, Fred's ex-wife, was left raising their 2 sons in the family home. Fred now faced mounting financial and housing difficulties. He often complained to Lori and Judy about the alimony and child support payments he was obligated to send his ex-wife, which amounted to $700 a month. On the night of May 28, 1981, Christine and Fred's 11-year-old son was startled awake by strange noises in the dark. When he opened his eyes, he saw a masked intruder attempting to tie him up. The stranger wore gloves, a green tracksuit, and a ski mask, with red hair pulled back into a ponytail. Terrified, the boy screamed, startling the intruder. As the figure fled, they shouted threats. The boy immediately ran to his mother's room, only to discover Christine bound to the bed with her mouth taped shut. She had been shot in the chest. The boy called for an ambulance and the police, but by the time help arrived, it was too late. Christine, just 30 years old, had died from a gunshot wound that pierced her chest and grazed her heart, causing fatal blood loss. Her children were unharmed. Forensic investigators quickly examined the home. There were no signs of forced entry, nor was anything missing. While some families in the area occasionally left their doors unlocked, Christine's sons insisted they always locked up, leading detectives to suspect that the killer may have had a key and was familiar with the household. Fred was informed of the tragedy while on duty. A colleague picked him up and drove him to the house, where he saw Christine's body. Fred insisted he had nothing to do with the murder. Later that night, back at Lori's apartment, Fred showed his colleague his service revolver. With only a cursory glance, the colleague claimed the gun hadn't been fired recently. Seems to have cleared the doubts about Fred. But when the revolver was properly tested, ballistics confirmed it was the weapon used to kill Christine. Despite this, investigators soon turned their attention not to Fred, but to Lori Bembenek. Detectives believed Lori had a motive: resentment toward Christine, whom she blamed for Fred's costly child support payments. Lori also had potential access to Christine's home. Fred had secretly copied his eldest son's house key, which, investigators argued, could have ended up in Lori's possession. This theory suggested she could have entered the house undetected. Lori, however, denied the accusations, stating she had gone to bed early that night. But with Fred on duty and Judy asleep, no one could corroborate her alibi. Christine's 11-year-old son described the intruder as a male figure with red hair and a ponytail, dressed in a green tracksuit and black shoes. Lori was a blonde and did not own a wig. Yet just days later, a bizarre discovery shifted the case. When plumbers were called to unclog Lori's apartment drain, they found a red wig lodged in the pipes. Lori swore she had never seen it and had no idea how it got there. Police then searched her apartment and uncovered a green tracksuit, closely matching the description of the intruder's clothing. With this evidence, detectives believed they had their suspect. On June 24, 1981, less than a month after Christine's death, Lori Bembenek was arrested for murder. From the start, Lori insisted she was being framed by the Milwaukee police as revenge for her earlier discrimination complaints. Still, her inability to produce a solid alibi severely weakened her case. Her refusal to take a lie detector test further fueled suspicion. Lori explained her decision by citing her time in law enforcement, where she had seen firsthand that polygraphs were unreliable and could be manipulated, even though lie detector results weren't admissible in court. Her refusal, while logical, was not well received. At the time, Lori was working as a security officer at the Marquette University. Investigators searched her locker and seized a comb for forensic testing. The FBI later claimed that hair recovered from the crime scene was microscopically similar to strands found on Lori's comb. With this, detectives announced they had enough evidence to charge her with first-degree murder. Lori Bembenek's trial for the first-degree murder of Christine Schultz was set for February 1982. Until then, Lori remained free on bond, awaiting trial under intense public scrutiny. The case quickly became a national sensation, and the relentless press attention transformed her into a reluctant celebrity. Every detail of her life, her looks, her clothes, her past, was splashed across headlines. Reporters even saddled her with the nickname Bambi, a play on her last name, which they despised for its mocking undertone. As the trial neared, two of Lori's closest connections turned against her. Her former best friend and roommate, Judy Tsess, emerged as a key witness for the prosecution. Once inseparable, they had fallen out after their dismissal from law enforcement. On the stand, Judy claimed Lori harbored deep hatred toward Christine and had often threatened to kill her. She further alleged that Lori had purchased a red wig in the weeks leading up to the murder. Judy's testimony was riddled with inconsistencies, particularly with timelines, but the discrepancies received little weight in court. Lori's estranged husband, Fred Schultz, also dealt her a crushing blow. No longer loyal to her, and already living with another woman, Fred testified against Lori, contradicting his earlier statements about his whereabouts on the night of the murder. He now claimed he had been at a bar, not off duty at home. The jury also heard about his prior accidental shooting of a fellow officer, though he had been cleared of wrongdoing. Other witnesses came forward with damning claims that Lori had repeatedly talked about killing Christine, that she had once offered someone money to carry out the crime, and that she owned a green tracksuit similar to the one worn by the intruder. A store clerk testified that Lori had purchased a wig resembling the one found in her apartment's plumbing, and forensic experts reported that wig fibers matched those at the crime scene. The prosecution's portrait of Lori was harsh, a vain, ambitious young woman who, obsessed with Fred's money and resentful of Christine, wanted her out of the picture so she could enjoy Fred's house without the burden of child support. The defense, by contrast, argued that Lori had no desire to raise Fred's children and insisted she was the victim of a frame-up. Lori herself claimed that the Milwaukee Police Department had conspired against her as retaliation for her efforts to expose corruption and misconduct within the force. She argued that Fred, who stood to benefit most by avoiding alimony, regaining his home, and gaining custody of his children, was the one with the true motive. But the jury was unmoved. On March 9, 1982, after a highly publicized trial, 22-year-old Lori Bembenek was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. 2 years later, she and Fred divorced. Prison life did not break Lori. She studied law, contributed artwork to the prison newspaper, and clung to the hope of overturning her conviction. Through a fellow inmate, she began corresponding with Dominic Guglielmo, the brother of another prisoner. Their relationship blossomed into romance, and Dominic became her most steadfast supporter. On July 15, 1990, after 8 years behind bars, Lauria made a daring escape. She slipped out through a laundry room window, scaled a barbed wire fence, and fled into the night, where Dominic waited with a getaway car. Together, they crossed into Canada, posing as a married couple while evading authorities. Meanwhile, troubling new evidence began to surface. A fellow prisoner, Freddie Horenberger, allegedly confessed to killing Christine at Fred Schultz's request, though he refused to testify publicly. Judy, Lori's former friend, later recanted her testimony, admitting she had been pressured by police and never truly believed Lori was guilty. Additional revelations cast further doubt on the case. Moreover, Fred had been granted immunity in exchange for his testimony, an arrangement not revealed during the trial. With these revelations, the theory that Lori had been framed gained traction. Her prison break only amplified the public fascination with her case. Far from being vilified, Lori gained an army of supporters. Sympathizers wore T-shirts declaring, "Run, Bambi, run," raised money for private investigators and legal fees, and formed clubs dedicated to clearing her name. For many, she came to symbolize the dangers of corruption, sexism, and injustice in the criminal justice system. At this point, problems with the initial investigation were becoming clear. The wig, a central piece of prosecution evidence, was far from conclusive. Having been retrieved from a sewer, it was likely contaminated, and the store clerk's testimony about Lori purchasing such a wig was shaky at best. Even more damaging to the case, Judy, the prosecution's star witness, had since recanted her testimony, admitting she had been pressured by police and had personal conflicts with Lori before the murder. Without Judy's account, much of the state's case against Lori unraveled. Authorities had also leaned heavily on the testimony of Sean, Christine's eldest son, who claimed he saw the intruder. But Sean described the perpetrator as a man, taller and more heavily built than Lori, with a low, growling male voice. Years later, as an adult, Sean repeated in interviews that there was no way he could have mistaken the figure he saw for a woman. Nevertheless, investigators brushed aside this detail. After escaping from prison, Lori and Dominic crossed the Canadian border, eventually reaching Thunder Bay, Ontario. Life on the run was far harsher than they had imagined. With no money, their relationship quickly frayed. Lori struggled to survive, finding work as a waitress under the alias Jennifer Gazana and dyeing her hair to avoid recognition. When that wasn't enough, she picked up a second job as a fitness instructor. Dominic, however, grew despondent. He refused to work, spent their limited funds on hunting and fishing gear, passed his days outdoors with new acquaintances. Lori's efforts to hold their new life together came crashing down when a television program aired a segment on America's Most Wanted Fugitives. A restaurant customer recognized her and tipped off authorities. On October 17, 1990, Canadian police arrested Dominic and Lori. Dominic was extradited to the United States, where he served 3.5 months for aiding the escape, before abandoning Lori altogether. Lori, meanwhile, fought desperately to remain in Canada. She portrayed herself as a political refugee, a woman persecuted and wrongfully imprisoned, and even passed a polygraph test to support her claim of innocence. But United States authorities pressed for her return, and eventually Canadian officials agreed, on the condition that she receive a new trial. This sparked a reinvestigation that revealed numerous flaws in the original Milwaukee police inquiry. Evidence handling had been sloppy, investigative leads were ignored, and much of the state's case rested on circumstantial claims. Still, Lori's defense team feared that a full acquittal was unlikely. The prosecution, too, faced difficulties, with little credible evidence left to rely on. On December 9, 1992, Lauria struck a deal. In an unusual arrangement, she entered a plea of no contest, securing a reduced sentence of 20 years with parole eligibility. Because of the time she had already served, she was released directly from the courtroom. For the next decade, she lived under strict parole conditions, checking in regularly with authorities to avoid being sent back to prison. Freedom, however, came at a heavy price. Years of incarceration had left deep scars. Lori, once strikingly beautiful, had visibly aged, struggled with post-traumatic stress disorder, and turned to alcohol as a coping mechanism, which spiraled into dependency. She spoke openly about her own life thoughts as she battled emotional turmoil and crippling debt. Over $2 million in legal expenses forced her into bankruptcy. Her story, however, continued to captivate the public. Lori appeared on talk shows, became the subject of multiple books, and even published her own autobiography, Woman on the Run. She tried to capitalize on her notoriety by selling her artwork and briefly opened a gallery, but disaster struck again when a fire destroyed nearly all her paintings. Lori suspected the blaze was the work of vengeful police officers struggling to rebuild. She found herself virtually unemployable due to her fame and notoriety. Eventually, she left Milwaukee behind, relocating to Vancouver to live with her parents and escape the constant reminder of her turbulent past. In August 2002, Lori Bembenek's probation period finally ended. Soon after, she petitioned the court to allow DNA testing on the evidence used against her. Items like Christine Schultz's blood-stained bedding, the bullet removed from her body, clothing, and the red wig fibers. But the tests would cost tens of thousands of dollars, far beyond Lori's reach. Then, in November 2002, Lori received an unusual offer. A television program, Dr. Phil, dedicated to investigating cold cases, invited her to appear on their show, and even offered to cover the $20,000 cost of advanced DNA testing. The producers insisted on re-examining the bullet and made it clear all results would be compared with Lori's own DNA profile. At the time, she was 44 years old. During filming, Lori was housed in a private apartment and given security because of the media frenzy surrounding her case. But instead of feeling free, she felt trapped once again. Overwhelmed by anxiety, she suffered a panic attack and, in desperation, jumped out of a window. The fall left her with devastating injuries, leading to the amputation of her leg below the knee. The show was abruptly canceled. Lori later sued the program, claiming she had been wrongfully confined. But the court rejected her lawsuit. She also attempted to reopen her case, hoping to prove her innocence. But since she had previously agreed not to challenge the conviction, her petitions were denied. Her lawyers still fought for her, arguing that key evidence had been suppressed during the original trial. A ballistics test suggested the fatal bullet did not match Lori Bembenek's gun. Male DNA was also found on Christine's body, pointing to abuse assault. Even Christine's eldest son continued to insist Lori was not the killer. He claimed to have seen a man at the crime scene. Despite all of this, the appeals went nowhere. Life eventually brought Lori to Vancouver, where she met Marty Carson, a Forest Service worker. They married in 2005, but her years of struggle took a toll. In 2010, Lori was diagnosed with hepatitis, and on November 20, at just 52 years old, she died of liver and kidney failure. Until her final breath, Lori maintained her innocence. Love can be beautiful, but sometimes it can become a destructive force. For some, the emotion spirals out of control, blurring the line between passion and obsession. And as today's case shows, when that obsession simmers in a twisted mind, it can explode into unimaginably violence. In the twisted mind of a killer, unrequited love is not just pain. It becomes an excuse to kill. One seemingly ordinary evening, a happy newlywed couple was brutally murdered, leaving behind their 7-month-old baby. What really happened to them, and who was behind this horrific crime? Mountain City, Tennessee, United States, is a quiet town with a population of just over 2,000 residents and a remarkably low crime rate. In such a close-knit place, most people know one another by name or face. The town itself is modest, with only a few notable establishments, one large general store, a gas station, and a bar. Yet, it was in this unassuming community that one of the most disturbing crime stories in recent United States history unfolded. Billy Payne Jr., born on July 10, 1975, in North Carolina, was remembered as an optimistic and warm-hearted man deeply loved by his family. From childhood, he developed a fascination with coin collecting, spending weekends browsing flea markets and estate sales for rare finds. Beyond his hobby, Billy had a love for the outdoors. He enjoyed fishing, riding ATVs, and camping in the nearby mountains. By 2010, Billy had settled in Mountain City, where he worked as a machine operator at a textile factory. Around that time, he met a young woman named Billie Jean Hayworth, born on March 19, 1988. Despite their 13-year age gap, the two quickly formed a strong bond. They not only worked together at the factory, but also shared passions for an active, outdoor lifestyle. Coincidentally, they also shared the same first name. Like Billy, Billie Jean enjoyed garage sales and flea markets. Though rather than coins, she sought out unique trinkets and household treasures. After only a few weeks of dating, Billie Jean moved in with Billy, and before long, they welcomed their first child, a son named Tyler. For Billie Jean, this was the life she had always dreamed of. She had longed to build a family of her own, yet relationships with men her age had always fallen short. With Billy, she found not only love, but stability and devotion. To her family, she often confided that she had finally discovered what true affection meant. Tragically, this newfound happiness would be cut short far too soon. On the morning of January 31, 2012, at about 10:45 a.m., one of Billy's neighbors stopped by the house. Billy had a habit of getting the newspapers for his neighbors, and they will take it later. As usual, the neighbor headed to the back door, expecting to find the day's newspaper waiting. But this time, it wasn't there. He also noticed Billy's door was unlocked. In Mountain City, leaving doors open was common, even in the 2010 second, but the missing newspaper struck him as odd. The neighbor called out for Billie Jean, asking about the paper, but there was no response. Growing uneasy, he stepped inside. He called again for Billy and Billie Jean by name, but the silence was unsettling. Then, faintly, he heard what sounded like a baby whimpering. With both family cars in the driveway, he knew they must be home. Something was wrong. Following the sound, he pushed open the bedroom door and was met with horror. 36-year-old Billy Payne lay lifeless in bed, his face bloodied from a gunshot wound. Shocked, the neighbor cried out for Billie Jean and hurried through the house. Moments later, in the basement, he found her body. Billie Jean, just 23, had been shot in the head. In her arms, miraculously alive, was 7-month-old Tyler. Panicked, the neighbor ran outside, screaming for help, while his girlfriend dialed the police. When officers arrived, they began a meticulous examination of the scene. Billy's injuries were gruesome. In addition to the fatal gunshot wound to his face, his throat had been slit and he had several stab wounds. Investigators determined those wounds had been inflicted after death. The gunshot alone had been instantly fatal. Billie Jean, too, had died from a single gunshot to the right side of her head. Police theorized that Billy was attacked first, while Billie Jean was killed shortly after as she tried to flee with her baby in her arms. Forensic experts meticulously examined the house, yet they found no fingerprints or DNA evidence linking to the attacker. Whoever committed the crime had been well prepared, leaving investigators with few immediate leads. There were no signs of forced entry, which was not unusual given the town's habit of leaving doors unlocked. A neighbor later confirmed that Billy rarely locked theirs. From the arrangement of the bodies and the overall condition of the scene, detectives concluded that robbery was not the motive. Nothing had been taken. Instead, the killer seemed motivated only by the desire to kill. Eventually, investigators uncovered their first crucial pieces of evidence: shell casings. One was discovered in baby Tyler's chair, another beside Billie Jean's body, and a third on the bed where Billy Payne had been shot. The bullets themselves were carefully recovered from the victims' bodies and analyzed. One, in particular, stood out. It bore X-shaped notches. This detail was alarming. Such modifications are considered a military tactic. Bullets, altered in this way, are designed to fragment upon impact, causing catastrophic internal damage, heavy bleeding, and drastically lowering any chance of survival. The bullet retrieved from Billy's body had shattered, while the one from Billie Jean's head was still intact. Despite this difference, both bore the same distinctive notches. Because of this, detectives initially theorized that the victims might have been targeted by someone with military experience, or even a professional hitman. But the lingering question was, who could have harbored such a deep grudge against them to arrange something so brutal? Investigators began mapping the victims' social circles, interviewing friends, relatives, and neighbors. The first useful witness was Billy Payne's father, Albie, who lived in the same house. On the 31st of January, he had left for work around 5:30 a.m. He recalled nothing unusual that morning. Billy was asleep, and Billie Jean was awake feeding baby Tyler. Albie explained that some mornings a coworker picked him up, but that day he had left early on his own. When police spoke with the coworker, he confirmed driving by around 6 o'clock a.m. But when no one answered the door, he assumed Albie had already left. From this, detectives pieced together a timeline. Billy and Billie Jean were likely killed between 5:30 a.m. and 6 o'clock a.m. With Albie cleared of suspicion, investigators turned their attention to others in Billy and Billie Jean's orbit who might bear hostility toward them. Their focus soon narrowed to Janelle Potter. Janelle's behavior immediately stood out. The Potter family was known in Mountain City for their reclusiveness and eccentricity. Since moving there in 2004, they had rarely interacted with neighbors and were largely disliked within the community. Janelle's father, Marvin Potter, often boasted of being a former CIA agent and Vietnam War veteran. Her mother, Barbara Potter, who had once worked for Hewlett-Packard before becoming a homemaker, was equally unconventional. Together, the parents maintained strict and unusual control over their children. The Potters had 2 daughters. The younger one, Christina, eventually rebelled against this control. By 2009, she had left home and moved in with her grandmother in Mountain City, where she built a normal, independent life. Her relationship with her parents deteriorated further after her escape, to the point where she later filed a restraining order against them. Janelle, on the other hand, remained firmly under her parents' grip. At 30 years old in 2012, she still lived at home and relied entirely on their supervision. The control extended far beyond daily life. Her parents restricted her education and even her access to the internet, citing early diagnoses of developmental delays. Janelle also suffered from diabetes, which her parents often used as another justification for their overprotectiveness. Even as restrictions eased over time, Janelle seemed unwilling, or unable, to step outside of that sheltered existence. Unlike Janelle, Christina integrated smoothly into the community after leaving home. When police questioned her, she provided crucial insight into the family's dynamics. The Potter family was widely regarded as strange and unapproachable, and Janelle carried that same reputation. She rarely left the house, preferring online friendships over real-world interactions. In 2009, she met Tracy, Billy Payne's sister, at a local drugstore. Despite the Potters' notoriety in Mountain City, Tracy sympathized with Janelle and befriended her. They spent time together, and Tracy even visited the Potter household. Janelle also met Billy Payne during this period, shortly before he began dating Billie Jean. Tracy later recalled how unusual it was that Janelle, then 27 years old, still sought her parents' permission to maintain a friendship. Janelle first met Billy Payne in 2009, less than a year before he and Billie Jean began their relationship. Once Billy and Billie Jean became a couple, Janelle began claiming she was the target of online harassment. She insisted that Billie Jean was jealous of her and responsible for the threatening messages she said she received. Janelle took her complaints to social media, publicly posting accusations and speculations about Billie Jean's supposed behavior. When detectives visited the Potters' home, Marvin Potter immediately grew defensive, declaring that his family was always unfairly blamed for the town's problems. Janelle herself claimed that Billie Jean and Billy Payne were stalking her. According to Janelle, the harassment began shortly after they met. She alleged that Billie Jean had created multiple social media accounts to send her threats and had even driven past her house, shouting menaces of abuse and murder. The detectives also considered another suspect, Jamie Curd. Jamie was both a co-worker and second cousin to Billy Payne. In the past, their relationship had been close, almost brotherly, but around 2010, tensions rose, and during one workplace argument, Jamie was overheard threatening to slit Billy's throat. Tracy told investigators that Janelle had shown an interest in Jamie because her parents forbade dating. Janelle presented Jamie as someone good with computers, who was simply helping the family with technical issues. This excuse allowed her to see him regularly. Over time, Jamie provided Janelle with a secret cell phone so they could communicate privately, hidden from her parents. When questioned, Janelle denied being romantically involved, insisting they were just friends, a lie that only deepened investigators' suspicions. When Janelle became convinced that Billie Jean was stalking her, she confided in Jamie. This created a rift between Jamie and his cousin Billy Payne. Billy, dismissing Janelle's claims as delusional, referred to her as a crazy woman, which fueled Jamie's anger further. Police brought Jamie in for questioning. At first, he denied everything, both any role in the murders and his relationship with Janelle. He even agreed to a polygraph test but failed every question. Under pressure, Jamie eventually cracked. He admitted to being at the Payne residence during the killings, but insisted that he had not pulled the trigger. According to him, the shooter was Marvin Potter. Jamie confessed only to slitting Billy's throat after Billy had already been shot. Jamie was arrested on February 7, 2012, about a week after the murders. To strengthen their case, detectives had Jamie place a recorded phone call to Marvin in hopes of coaxing a confession. However, Marvin grew suspicious, sensing that Jamie was fishing for information, and avoided specifics. Detectives then returned to the Potter residence. This time, Marvin appeared hostile. At one point, he even reached into his pocket, and officers feared he was going for a weapon. They immediately arrested him and brought him in for questioning. After hours of interrogation, Marvin finally broke. He admitted his role, explaining that he believed people were constantly tormenting his daughter and that he had been forced to act to protect her, at any cost. A subsequent search of the Potter home revealed a disturbing cache. Dozens of firearms were hidden in closets, under beds, and even left out in the open. Knives were scattered throughout the house. Investigators also found printed photographs of Billy Payne and Billie Jean, many taken from Billie Jean's social media. The most unsettling images were of Billie Jean, defaced with crude insults scrawled in red marker. Detectives later confirmed that Janelle had downloaded and printed these photos herself. In the middle of the evidence collection, Janelle even snatched one of the defaced pictures and tore it up. She later claimed she did so out of nervous tension, but investigators did not believe her. When police inspected Marvin's car, they discovered several .38 caliber revolvers and ammunition, identical to the type used in the murders. Some of the bullets had distinctive notches on their tips, the same as those recovered at the crime scene. They also found garbage bags filled with shredded documents, cut into thin strips but not completely destroyed. The material was collected and sent to the lab, where forensic experts spent over a month painstakingly reconstructing the papers. Meanwhile, rumors circulated through the small town. Many locals suspected that Janelle and her mother were the real masterminds, manipulating Marvin and Jamie into carrying out the killings. Tracy, Billy Payne's sister, too was convinced. Jealousy drove Janelle to orchestrate the crime, but despite the suspicions, investigators still lacked solid evidence to arrest Janelle. The turning point came when detectives analyzed the Potter's computer. Instead of uncovering proof that Janelle had been harassed, they found the opposite. Threatening messages, supposedly from outsiders, were in fact written under accounts linked to Marvin's name. These messages simultaneously praised Janelle and insulted Billie Jean, revealing a twisted narrative Janelle herself had created. Meanwhile, Barbara Potter's behavior only deepened investigators' doubts. Even after Marvin confessed, she insisted that he had been home with her the entire night of the murders. Strangely, she appeared less distressed about her husband's arrest than about the fact that their plan had fallen apart. After Marvin and Jamie were jailed, Barbara and Janelle became regular visitors at the local library, often spending hours on the public computers. Witnesses recalled how they continued to spread stories online, portraying Janelle as the victim of relentless stalking. It seemed like a calculated attempt to sway public opinion. Even as evidence mounted against them, forensic experts finally pieced together more than 100 pages from the shredded papers. They contained screenshots, photographs, and printed emails, materials heavily centered on Janelle's supposed victimization. This digital trail pointed not to Marvin, who lacked computer skills, but to Barbara and Janelle as the true architects. Among the documents, one name appeared repeatedly: Chris. According to the Potters, Chris was a CIA operative who had been corresponding with them online. They claimed his mission was to protect Janelle from cyberstalkers. Barbara and Janelle both swore they had been in direct contact with him. To outsiders, Chris was portrayed as a mysterious guardian angel. In reality, no one had ever met him or even spoken to him by phone. When investigators analyzed the emails attributed to Chris, the truth unraveled. The writing style, grammatical quirks, and spelling errors matched Janelle's own correspondence almost perfectly. The same linguistic fingerprints appeared in the threatening notes Janelle claimed to have received. Police concluded that Chris was nothing more than an elaborate fabrication, another fake persona Janelle invented to manipulate her parents, Jamie, and the community. Still, Barbara and Marvin clung to the fantasy. Their denial was so absolute that they ignored the obvious. Not once had anyone seen or heard from this so-called CIA agent. Janelle tried to shift the blame, claiming her computer had been hacked. But when detectives traced the IP addresses, every single message from Chris led back to the Potter's home computer. In August 2013, investigators finally gathered enough evidence to arrest Janelle and her mother, Barbara. Both were charged with orchestrating the double murder, their motive rooted in jealousy and obsession. The case against them was strong, not only digital evidence, but also testimony from key witnesses who confirmed the darkest suspicions. One of those witnesses was Jamie, who revealed the depth of Janelle's fixation on Billy Payne. From the moment she met him, Janelle developed an obsessive interest, though Billy never reciprocated. To him, she was merely an odd local figure, and her parents' suffocating control made any real friendship impossible. Even after starting a secret relationship with Jamie, Janelle is still obsessed with Billy. When Billy started dating Billie Jean, her obsession spiraled into resentment, and eventually, hatred. On October 3, 2013, Marvin Potter appeared in court. He did not deny his role in the killings, but claimed he acted to protect his daughter from what he believed was harassment by Billy and Billie Jean. Realizing too late that he had been deceived, Marvin confessed with a broken spirit. The jury found him guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. and he was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms. Jamie Curd accepted a plea bargain. By cooperating with police and testifying against the Potters, he received a 25-year prison sentence without the possibility of parole. His testimony, however, proved crucial in building the prosecution's case. The trial of Janelle and Barbara began in May 2015. Prosecutors presented a wealth of evidence, including Jamie's detailed confession. He described how Janelle's anger intensified after Billy Payne began dating Billie Jean. She often raged that their relationship was doomed, and when the couple had a child, her hostility escalated into constant online slander and false accusations of stalking. According to Jamie's account, on the night of the 30th of January, 2012, he was at the Potters' home working on Janelle's computer. Marvin entered the room and asked for his help. He wanted Jamie to drive him to Billy Payne's house and wait outside. The plan was vague, but Jamie agreed. In the early morning hours of the 31st of January, Janelle called Jamie again, urging him to help her father. Jamie picked Marvin up, parked near the victim's home, and waited until Billy Payne's father left for work. Marvin then handed Jamie a gun, insisting he only wanted to scare Billy and Billie Jean. Moments later, shots rang out. Jamie, furious at Billy's insults toward Janelle, stormed inside and attacked Billy with a knife. Even though Billy was already fatally wounded from gunshots, at trial, the prosecution also introduced extensive digital evidence. Detectives had recovered over 2,800 pages of online activity referencing Billy Payne and Billie Jean. Janelle had created multiple fake accounts, sending herself threats to support her narrative of persecution, while simultaneously convincing her parents and Jamie that she was in constant danger. Some personas were loosely based on real people, most notably Chris, whom Janelle described as a CIA agent. In reality, Chris was a former classmate who had moved away and become a police officer. He testified in court, confirming he had no connection to the Potters' delusional web of lies. Janelle's defense attorney argued that she was too intellectually limited to orchestrate such a complex scheme. They portrayed her as emotionally stunted, under the complete control of her parents, and incapable of functioning beyond the level of a 4th grader. But the sheer volume of digital evidence and testimony from those who had seen her manipulation firsthand painted a very different picture, one of calculated deceit, jealousy, and obsession that had culminated in murder. However, the prosecutor firmly argued that despite her personal issues, Janelle was far from helpless. She was, in fact, a skilled manipulator. Barbara, too, was seen as a full accomplice. Investigators concluded she was just as guilty as her daughter, since she provided Marvin with information and helped spark the deadly attack. More than that, she deliberately pushed her husband into protecting their daughter and the family. Letters and messages revealed Barbara's active role in communicating with the fake agent Chris. Through him, she fueled the narrative that Billie Jean was supposedly the mastermind, driven by jealousy of Janelle's beauty, and that Billie Jean had even threatened to kill the entire Potter family. A story meant to justify their actions, but in reality, none of that was true. The tragedy started over something far more trivial. Billy and Billie Jean simply unfriended Janelle on Facebook, and she unfriended them. Janelle took deep offense, and in retaliation, she began catfishing, creating fake accounts, pretending to be other people, and sending threats. After a 7-day trial, both Janelle Potter and Barbara Potter were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Outraged, they kept insisting that the Potter family had nothing to do with the crime, but their appeals were denied. By now, all 4 members are in custody. The story of Billy Payne and Billie Jean Hayworth is a chilling reminder of how jealousy, manipulation, and obsession can escalate into unthinkable violence. What began as something as simple and seemingly harmless as a Facebook unfriend spiraled into a deadly chain of lies. In the end, 2 young parents lost their lives, leaving behind a newborn baby boy. Mountain City may have returned to its quiet routine, But the scars of this crime still linger, a haunting reminder that even in the most peaceful of places, darkness can take root.